Hi, I'm Joe Dinical, and you're listening to the Quantum Leap Podcast.
Hello, and welcome back to the Quantum Leap Podcast, Quantum Leap Aftershow. I'm Albie, and as with me always, it's Hayden. At least usually always.
Yeah, well, I'm very happy to be back. I'm sorry I had to miss the last episode, but I really did enjoy watching it as opposed to being a part of it for once. So, yeah, when we want to go family style, it's best as a voyeur.
And joining us this week is Roger Colton. How you doing, Roger?
I'm doing well.
The interview that Roger did with us was after the release of the lost ending to Mirror Image.
I can tell the story about how that came to be. When the show was originally in production, there was a group of us who had a weekly text chat on AOL at the time, called the Imaging Chamber of all things, and we had gotten the attention of some folks here and there, and one of them was actually sharing with one of my co-hosts a variety of things, including some scripts and eventually dailies. And one of the things that came along a couple of years afterwards was a copy of the dailies for Mirror Image. And so I ended up with a third generation copy of those dailies. And I eventually got them transferred over to DVD from VHS. So the quality was pretty bad, but you could see actually what had been produced, what had been shot. And there's only one take of that scene, as opposed to multiple takes from multiple views for the rest of the show. So I'm guessing that James Whitmore, as the director, decided that's all he wanted, so that's all he got. I know the script has, pretty much follows what was shot and what we saw, but that's pretty much how it ended up. So yeah, that's previously where my chat was.
Nice.
I think that was one of the best episodes of the podcast that we ever did as well. So thanks for being a part of that. And I'm really keen to get to hear what you're thinking about the new revival series and obviously the episode that we just watched, which was Family Star. So,
yep.
And the rest is history. This week we're talking about Quantum Leap episode 13 of the new series, Family Style. It's all about a restaurant and the family-owned restaurant, so it should be interesting to talk about. Roger, what was your first impression of Family Style?
Well, I thought it was an interesting story. It could have been set virtually in anywhere. The whole idea of an immigrant family coming to the United States and opening a restaurant. Pick just about any ethnicity you want and about any style of cuisine you want, and the family is all part of it. It's actually something that, if you think back to other shows that have been on recently, Apple TV's For All Mankind has a whole subplot that involves a Vietnamese family immigrating and opening a restaurant at some point. So it's kind of a good place at keeping family involved. It's a good bit of storytelling. But having said that, and having worked in restaurants in younger days, I kind of got some good chuckles.
Yeah, there was a couple things that didn't seem quite right about the restaurant, but I'm sure we'll talk about that later. Hayden, what do you think about this Deborah Pratt directed episode? Deborah Pratt's first time directing a Quantum Leap episode, Family Style.
Yeah. Well, as far as the direction goes, it was top notch. But and I suppose the story itself was quite sweet, and I think we've all met people who are like the mother and who are like the brash sister who wants to, spread her wings. And I think it was very relatable. The only thing that kind of bothered me a little bit, I don't know if it's offensive or not because I'm not one of the people that were portrayed, but it did seem to really be walking the line of stereotypes, and like even some of the lines were a bit cringy, like "Oh, us Indians really like an investment" and things like that. Yeah, look, I'm not going to comment on whether it's offensive or not because I wouldn't be able to say, but it did cross my mind that, maybe they're, bordering things that they maybe could have done better. Like, they didn't need to say us Indians love an investment. They could have just said we love an investment. That would have been perfectly fine. But having said that, I've met so many people like the people in this story. I've worked in a pizza shop before, but I actually felt a little bit more familiar with having done a whole lot of tutoring and the very high expectations set by parents, especially from certain cultures. Indian culture is one of them. And the fact that there is an awful lot of pressure put on and expecting perfection all the time. I've seen a lot of that, and it did, it did feel very familiar. And I was going to say as well, sometimes they do just need, a gentle word saying, we're not miracle workers, we're not perfect. What we want is incremental improvements, and those small improvements, make something big in the long run. So I do like the fact that through the episode, the mother's like, all right, I'll let you do one new recipe. And then when they see that that's successful, she's more likely to want to increase that. And we saw she was willing, even though reluctantly, to let the two daughters run the restaurant while she steps back a little bit. And I'm glad that they, did mention, you've got some time to go enjoy yourself now, go do it. So, yeah, hopefully you can make something coherent out of that rambling, Albie.
No, I got you. That one line did bump me a little bit. Us Indians like an investment. I was like, it's a little out of place, maybe, but I'm sure they had they're so good behind the scenes with that kind of stuff. I'm sure they had like a cultural sensitivity expert on set or something to make sure, but who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's not so bad if the writer was someone of that culture and is writing from their experience, and there are some tongue-in-cheek things then that it's a bit more acceptable to do. But I don't remember who wrote the episode, unfortunately. So, yeah, I'm just saying, got to be very, very careful with the bordering of the stereotypes. It's the same kind of concern that I had in the episode for the earthquake. Sorry, in the episode for the earthquake. Where Ben was recalling his time as a child and the very high expectations put upon him from his mother. The fact that she was quite overbearing at times, and yeah, again, very stereotypical. But then again, stereotypes exist because there is a kernel of truth to them. They're things that have happened over a long period of time. So that's the thing. It's kind of a very, it really needs a good balancing act.
I really enjoyed this episode. It was a sweet episode. It was a nice episode. There wasn't a lot of excitement or anything, I guess a building blowing up was a little bit of excitement, but it wasn't one where was like major stakes. It was just like a nice Quantum Leap episode, with a nice family story, and I really enjoyed it. So I think nice, sweet, nice is what I can say. I did go into this episode knowing Deborah did direct it, so I was watching different things like camera moves and angles and different choices she made, and I really appreciated her work as a director on this episode. And I think it definitely goes with the other Quantum Leap episodes direction wise, so it doesn't feel out of place at all. But I did feel like she gave it a special touch, if that makes sense. As far as the other storyline, the B storyline with Ian and the continuing, mystery of what's going on. I enjoyed that as well, and I enjoyed their partner is an actress named Alice Kremmelberg, so it was really cool to see her. I really enjoyed her in the episode too. We'll talk more about that later, but I like the A story, I like the B story. It was a good episode, and I think Deborah did a great job. Everybody involved did a great job.
Yeah.
That's my first impression. Roger, more thoughts on this episode?
Well, one of the things I've always liked about the stories of Quantum Leap is that they can pretty much take place anywhere. And this was a good example of that. Family-owned restaurants all across the country, they have their struggles. And even any kind of a restaurant nowadays, the failure rate is so high.
Especially in the pandemic too.
Yeah. The fact that it failed in the original history is not a surprise. I mean, it's just so many restaurants, if they last 6 months, it's a miracle now in today's world, especially like here in San Francisco. Opening a restaurant and keeping it running for any amount of time is a struggle. So for a family, it can be even more so. It puts a lot of stress on them. But that having been said, the whole idea that it was an Indian restaurant and an Indian family, it could have been any kind of ethnicity. And the whole thing about investments, in many cases, that's how the restaurant gets going. It's a family that, someone will be successful at it and will share that wealth with somebody else, make an investment in another restaurant. NPR did an interesting story here not too long ago about donut shops and Cambodian families. And it was, again, they would invest in one person would invest in someone else's business. So it was an interesting point to see this mentioned in Quantum Leap. It tied in well, I thought, with the rest of the story.
Yeah. I just wanted to say, Albie, you were talking about Deborah Pratt's direction and you were looking at camera angles and all that sort of stuff. I actually think it's a testament to how good the direction is when everything just looks so natural. So that sort of thing didn't cross my mind at all, but that suggests then that the direction is really good, because if something has been done well, then you don't think about it and you don't notice it.
Well, you also have to give credit to the script writer and the editors, because in many cases, that's one of the things that Quantum Leap has always done well. I mean, one of my favorite edited episodes is A Leap for Lisa. I mean, just spot on the way it's moves at such a brisk pace, and yet cut, and you don't even think about it. You just see it happening. I mean, I sat down one time and I watched it, the number of cuts that it had in it, and it was higher than a normal episode, but it worked so well. So you've got to give first of all, you give the director credit for setting the ability to do that, but then you give the editor, after looking at the script, to see what they can make use of. It's a talent that I think in a lot of cases, especially in television, gets overlooked.
Mm-hmm. It's very important, though. An edit can totally change the story in many ways. So, I was really done well. The only shot that really took me out of it was just an impressive shot. The crane shot over like Stars Hollow, that town square where the tent was set up. And just that nice crane shot. It was a beautiful shot. That's the only reason it took me out of it, because I noticed how beautiful it was. It was just done very well. It reminded me a lot of
the stock footage of Portland, to give you an establishing shot of the location. Could have been anywhere. It didn't have to be Portland. Could have been any city around the United States. Again, the same thing could have applied. I'm kind of curious why they chose Portland as the location.
Mm-hmm. That's still on the West Coast. They haven't really, except for I think the one episode, which was the repilot. I think that was the furthest they made it, all the way to like, what was that, Boston area ish?
What, the one they filmed in Vancouver?
Philadelphia.
Yeah, I believe
yeah. So they pretty much stay in that same time zone, which is odd, because Sam used to go everywhere.
Right. And the big thing is if you look at, they took advantage of a lot of the lot at Universal and other places for locations. I mean, it may just be that with this first season, they're trying to stay as low in the budget as they can. And by not making a lot of trips to other locations, that may be part of it.
Yeah, they were definitely in Albie's alley again, the alley that I'm always looking for in every episode. It appeared more than a few times in this episode.
It must be at
then
Universal.
of course, the restaurant was. It's got to be. The restaurant was set in the same place that had the bar from the repilot. It was the same place that had the poetry from the previous episode. It was the same place that had the pawn shop where the jewelry forger was. I mean, and it was even the bounty hunter's office. I think that's just the standard.
Okay.
That standard
Quantum
set
deep
they're
time
allowed to
for you
use
then,
now.
Albie. My question is,
All right.
is it possible that maybe Ben actually hasn't been leaping into the past? Maybe he's been leaping into computer simulations. And the reason that everything is so
100%.
Yeah, and the reason that everything is so familiar is because it's just kind of using the same computer building blocks which create those simulations with just like the computer code changing some of the dressing. Yeah. Well, we don't know.
I like that.
I kind of have to just, because in the whole idea of what we see in the imaging chamber, you kind of would have to get an understanding that, again, we see what Madison sees or Addison sees.
Mm-hmm.
We don't get what Ben sees. We're kind of looking at the same way. So the idea that it'd be a computer simulation, computers are pretty good at simulating a lot of things, but I don't think that the kind of VR you're talking about it's not quite there yet. Yeah. Even in the quantum leap world of the future, I think it's a bit beyond I think he's capable.
We virtually had that exact same movie already, Source Code, which was Quantum Leap in a computer. Mm-hmm. So, look, I'd say it's not out of the realm of possibility, but then again, how depressing would that be if he's not really putting things right that once went wrong? If he's just... But then again, it might just be maybe they need him to do some practice before he actually slingshots into the future to do whatever task he needs to do. So you never really could know.
I think it really is a budgetary thing. I'm sure they get on the set and they're like, are we using this alley again? Come on, guys. What are we doing? It's the budget. Are we using this interior again? Yeah. So it's the budget. I think a lot. You got to do what you got to do.
The folks who are behind the production at NBC Universal basically have said, you need to stay on the lot. You need to keep your costs down as much as possible, because if you look at other productions of other shows like, even Star Trek Picard, they venture onto the Warner Brothers lot. It's not a question of where do we go or, where do we shoot? It's just that I think in this case, they are really trying to stick to that budget as much as possible. And in a first season TV show, that's not to be unexpected.
Yeah, and it doesn't really take me out of it. It adds to the quantum leapiness of it, because the original Quantum Leap had the the backlot syndrome many times. You were talking about Star Trek Picard. In the second episode of the season, they went to like a District 6 planet, and they were saying on the behind the scenes that they were just reusing everything they could from similar things. So if you look in the background, you could see different things they're reusing that they just had. So it's, no matter the budget, you're still trying to get as much as you can on screen for what you can afford. So
you can tell compelling stories in a single location. I mean, if you look at some of the, to use another example out of the Star Trek universe, the original series, one of the best episodes was Balance of Terror, which is basically an old submarine movie where you use two sets. You had the bridge on the Romulan ship, the bridge on the Enterprise, and 90% of that episode takes place on there. And it's like, if you can't save a budget that way for an episode, it's, you're going to try as much as possible to do that with a production on Quantum Leap. And I would actually like to see an episode that was focused more in a single location, because at that point you establish more in the way of the drama of the episode. Think of the original Quantum Leap episode,
Ghost
I'm
Ship.
going to bungle the title.
Ghost Ship.
Ghost Ship is a good one. The other one I was thinking of was is it Last Leap Before an Execution? Where Sam is basically waiting, to be executed. It's like, that's another one that very few sets, other than going over to the church to find that bit of evidence. A
bullet.
lot of that place in very closed spaces, and you got a lot of good, tight editing to make it work. So, yeah, that would be an interesting episode, I think.
I think next week we're getting kind of a bottle episode. I believe most of it takes place, if not all of it, on a battleship. So that'll be interesting.
Yeah, on the Iowa.
Yeah.
Is it Iowa?
Yeah. And that had to be an expensive episode to shoot, because even though the Iowa is just down in San Pedro, you've got to set up a lot of crew, a lot of lights. You move your cameras around, sound, all of that. And you've got to work within the spaces that are available to the production at the time. You just don't get full run of the ship.
Is it the Iowa in the episode? Because I know I Googled the number on the ship, 77, and it came up with the George W. Bush or George Herbert Walker Bush.
It is
one of the George Bushes.
It is the battleship, and it is the Iowa there at San Pedro.
Okay, cool. You're right by there.
Would be available. The other one, there's also a World War II Victory ship that's docked there, the Lane Victory, and so if they needed to use that for any other, they could have as well. So, yeah, they're docked pretty much side by side there in San Pedro.
All right. Well, I think that those are our first impressions. We're trying something a little bit different. We're having a little bit of group interviews, so we can get more opinions from more people that were part of the episode. So we'll do that. But first, we have to pay some bills. So, Hayden, who's our sponsor this week?
All right. Well, as usual, our sponsor is Campakes, and they've gone international.
Oh, good.
If you're ever feeling like you're trapped or that you just want to get out and about, well, try some of the new Indian-inspired maple cubes. All right, they've got butter chicken. They've got very, very spicy ones as well. And one sprinkling over your Campakes, and you're transported immediately to India. You're on holiday. So that is Campakes with the brand new international, including Indian maple cubes.
I will try that. They did not send me that pack. Did you get that pack in the mail? I did not get those. So I still haven't tried those, but I'm very intrigued.
You're not getting them because I ate them and they were delicious.
Okay, so I'll have to order some of my own, which I will at quantumleappodcast.com/campakes, because it's a great deal going on right now. I think now till the end of the run of season 1 of Quantum Leap, they're doing a special deal, and you get, I think, 23% off. I don't know why it's 23. That makes no sense.
Well, it's
but it's 23% off if you just put in our code. Yeah, there you go. Just put in our code, Quantum Leap Aftershow, and you'll get that 23% off. And that applies to no matter how much you order, no limit. So stock up. They last forever. All right, so now let's go to that interview, and we'll be right back.
Hi, this is Matt on the Quantum Leap podcast. I'm here tonight with Chris, and today we're super excited to be talking to Nandini Minocha and Meera Simhan, both from this week's episode, Family Style. Nandini, Meera, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
We're happy to have you.
We always like to start by just understanding a bit about your background, what led to you being in Quantum Leap. So, Nandini, perhaps we could start with you. Just a quick overview of your career, please.
Sure. I started my career in LA kind of late. So I was 45 before I got here. I've had many careers before that. I have a master's in business economics, like a good Indian girl that grew up in India. And I've had a few avatars before. So, but as I said, I came to LA at 45, and I've been doing this for about 10 years now. And how did I get on Quantum Leap? I booked it.
How did you go from being a business economics background to coming to the States, in middle age, and actually decide to be an actor? Was that the reason you came here? Like, how did that all come to be?
Well, this is going to take up the entire podcast, but very briefly and quickly.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'd like to know too.
I came here when I was 33. I came to the U.S. when I was 33. And I came here because of personal reasons. So I have two kids. The oldest was diagnosed with autism. And so when he was diagnosed, I decided with my then husband that we were going to move to the US. And so I did that, and I sort of left what I was doing back then. I had a career in advertising. Then I had started my own recruitment firm, which I ran for about 5 years in the advertising and marketing space. That's what I was doing at the time. And then I left all of that. I was an actor. I mean, that was my passion. So I always did that, but I didn't do it professionally. I did a few plays. Actually, I did do a TV series in India, but it wasn't huge. And then I was mommy for a long time. And then at 45, I was like, kill yourself, do acting. Do acting. So no, I'm being dramatic. But I basically decided that I needed to follow my passion. And it was time. And so I came to LA.
It's never too late to follow your passion.
Now you get to play mommy. And not only are you a mommy, you get to play mommy.
That's true. I play mommy a lot.
Meera, perhaps we can move over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born in England and raised in Southern California and India. I did my undergrad here in Southern California, not entirely sure what I wanted to do. And then I just sort of wandered into the drama department and saw the green room, and it looked like they were all having a really good time. And I thought, why not give this a shot? And I mean, I also, like a good Indian girl, had done Indian classical dancing my whole life. So I wasn't a stranger to being on stage. It was just a different form of expression and engagement with the audience. And then from there, I applied to drama school in England. I went to Lambda, and I lived in England for 6 years and worked there in theater and television, and then came back to Southern California to my family here, and have been here, for the last 20 years, acting and writing in television, film, and theater. So,
Meera, you said that you had been acting in the past, but been in LA acting and writing. And I guess this is a question for both of you. I mean, when you think about the kind of roles you were able to have in this episode of Quantum Leap, is that a rare thing in Hollywood these days, to have such an ethnic cast, to have a project that really speaks to your background?
Is it a rare thing? I don't think it's a rare thing now. I think there have been a lot of writers and creators wanting to tap into this South Asian American experience. There have been a lot of writers who also don't want to, who happen to be South Asian, who just want to say, hey, we're actors here and we just want to be actors, and it, whether we have this culture and it's part of us, but we want to be able to play, a lot of different parts, not just South Asian. But what I'm finding is that the characters are becoming more nuanced and the stories are becoming more nuanced. They're really rooted in reality of an authentic experience of us as South Asians. I'm finding that there are more and more of those stories being told, which is really wonderful than from when I came in the beginning. And that there are South Asian writers and creators doing that. For example, Adrita Mukherjee, who wrote this episode, is South Asian. So it was, she, I'm sure drew from her experience and told us, a lot of this was inspired by her family, her own family. So.
Yeah, there's a level of authenticity now because of people like Adrita, where, the stories that are being told, are much more nuanced, like you said, and much more authentic. When I came 10 years ago, it was very much stereotypical. A lot of the stuff that I was auditioning for were very stereotypical, and sometimes I just absolutely hated it, actually, to be honest. I don't do that weird Indian accent that sometimes actors are expected to do. And I feel like I'm booking more now than I did when I came in. So 10 years ago, I think that Hollywood had that impression that that's how you must sound or whatever. And I think that has changed a lot. And I think that, the stories are really good now. There was no arranged marriage here in this particular episode. I mean, it was a real story.
So, yeah, that's one thing that I noted about this episode. Why I enjoyed it so much was that authenticity that you guys are talking about. I mean, it seemed like we weren't just watching a family drama. I mean, the characters had such a dynamic and such a chemistry that it felt like we were seeing like a real family situation unfold. And I wanted to know a little bit about sort of the elements that you guys tried to bring to that to give it that authenticity. I know that you were working with another Indian writer and, working with Deborah, of course, we'd like to hear about that. Like, how did you guys collaborate? What did you bring to it to give it sort of that real flavor of, not just, okay, this is the episode about the Indian family. This was really well put together, heartfelt episode. And I think that all comes down to the relationships that we saw on screen. And, like just how real it all seemed. So if you can talk about that process.
I think a lot of it comes from the writing. It was very well written, very well thought through. It was authentic to the Indian family, to the relationships. I think our culture, and this is a good thing or a bad thing, but we're very family oriented to the point of codependency. And so I feel like it all comes from the writing. And Adrita was there the whole time. She was there with Deborah the whole time. And I felt like there was a lot of collaboration there between her and Deborah. She was watching us the whole time. Like if I rolled an R, because I've been here long enough now, I think I've picked up some of that. She was very authentic to that. And she would come back and say, oh, I think we did this. So I feel like that really helped. And of course, Deborah created that safe space where you could collaborate with them. And it was just so relaxed. And Raymond is such an amazing actor. Oh my God, he's so generous. And he's actually very real in the way that he is. Like, he just comes from that place where you can just relate to him in a very real way. And I think just the atmosphere on set, everybody was so warm and just there was no drama, there was no divas, there was everything was just relaxed, so you could do your work, and the writing was great, like I said. So it was just a great atmosphere for you to do your best work, I think.
I'm interested because you've touched on this a little bit already. Obviously, Deborah Pratt, being an actress herself, no doubt wanted to give you that space to be able to play and explore, but at the same time, yes. Network TV, 8-day shoot, very high-paced and frantic. Was there ever a feel of a kind of struggle there where you wanted to do more than you could, or did you always feel like there was just enough?
No, I think there were a couple of times. I mean, Meera is more experienced than me, so but for me, this was my first biggest guest star. I've done guest stars, but that's been like 5 scenes and, in the whole episode. This was a lot. So I was a little anxious about it because I was like, I have to deliver every time. And there were some tough scenes. So I think it really helped to have Deborah there. A couple of times, I think there was one scene that I struggled with, which was the comedic scene where it was like very fast paced. I don't know. It's in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Do you guys?
Yes.
And it was such a change of pace for me because we went from drama, like heavy drama, to sitcom. Times 10, and it took me a second, but Deborah was just amazing. She was there to sort of make you feel comfortable. And the last scene, I I found that we were rehearsing the last scene where I'm doing that scene with Raymond. I was just like, while rehearsing, suddenly I found myself, I was like, I was just welling up. And she just was like, let's go to close-up. So it's good to have a director like that who understands that when an actor's ready. And, you know, she moved really fast, and she knew how to get the best out of the actors. I think Meera would agree.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the real wonderful, you know, thing about doing this and just going back to the story and why, you know, the foundation, of course, you know, you have to have the writing. I think in terms of it, you know, really tapping into reality it's just you know, bringing in a wonderful group of people in terms of the creators and them being open, like Nandini said, creating a safe space, but being open to working, you know, with the actors. And if I had questions, I could go to Deborah and say, or other than, and ask questions about, you know, this particular line or what we're doing in this scene, you know, to really keep a sense of not the idea of just playing Indians, but we're a family.
Yeah.
You know, we're family, we're real, we are, you know, human beings, we are layered, we have relationships, we have a history, you know, we don't come in with only good food and, you know, we come in with a real human experience. And I think what's wonderful about Quantum Leap and even the past ones, which I used to watch with my mom, was that that's what it did. It tugged on your heart. Right? So it didn't matter where you were from or what ethnicity you were or your socioeconomic status. What was really wonderful was the human element of this collective experience. And that's what was so wonderful. It's a show that people keep going to because they're, and, you know, a vast group of people, you know, and in terms of, because of that human element of loss, of connection, of love, of, you know, a second chance, and what ifs, you know, what if this had happened or what if that hadn't happened? Or maybe it did. And if only we could, you know, go back and say this or do this, you know? So I think everyone feels that, you know, which is really wonderful. And what Deborah did so beautifully was, and what I, you know, you go into shows as guest stars and there's a tone of a show, right? So like Nandini was saying, like one scene, you know, it was a comedy scene and this you really have to draw out, but you really find the balance of the tone. And that's what you look to directors for. And that's what Deborah held for us. You know, she could, you know, help us with those levels. And also our own sense of like we bring in as actors, you know, you watch the show, you see what the tone is, and you can always, you know, find your way through that as an actor, you know, and then have that support of a director to kind of guide you when you do go in as a guest star.
You know, one of the scenes that we had in the kitchen where my daughter and I really fight, which is really intense. I remember it was written in a certain way, and I felt like it was very, very harsh. And we had a long discussion between Adrita, me, and Deborah about how that felt, and how I felt it should. I mean, not in terms of writing, but just in terms of presentation. And they were very open to how I felt about it, and I think that really helped to just have that. You know, to be able to have, because on TV, you don't have that often. You do not have that. You get on there and you do your work and you see the director when they have a correction, sometimes maybe over a microphone, or they'll just, you know, come and talk to you about it. But that kind of collaborative experience, I don't know. I think that was special. And again,
I mean, it was special. I have had it. I find a lot of wonderful people
Yes.
to be able to work with.
Yes.
And I have, you know, been able to, you know, been very lucky to be able to have that collaboration. So you're constantly seeking it. It doesn't always exist, but when it does, it's really wonderful. And this was one of those moments that it did. You know?
Yeah.
That actually speaks to a question that I had for you specifically, Nandini. The character of Sonali she was difficult. I mean, she was pushy, she was stubborn, she was a control freak.
Yeah.
Yet I never disliked her. And you did a wonderful job of like portraying her as someone who can be difficult to get along with, but at the same time, there was not like an edge. And does that go back to what you were discussing with Deborah? Because I have to think it was probably a difficult line to walk.
Yes, and I think that's what I felt like. I did not want her to come across as, and I think Deborah had the same feeling. Did not want her to come across as, I don't want to use foul language, but harsh, very harsh. And I wanted to be able to show that she had a lot of pressure in her life, but, and she was controlling, and she was controlling because she had to control a lot. It was all falling apart. And so it was important to portray that. But I think those conversations, we did have those conversations. We literally had those conversations where it was like, she does not need to come across like a bitch. And I think Deborah said, I don't want your character to come across as a bitch.
Very plain speaking.
So, and Meera, I think that I maybe can bring that to you, because I mean, you had kind of a thankless role in the fact that you were the snooty cousin, and I'm just wondering, when you were preparing for the role, like, how did you see the character? Did you see the character as being genuinely concerned for, you know, the family, or did you approach it as, yeah, she's just lording it over and she's, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Because they looked at it two different ways in the episode. It comes through in the end, but how did you approach playing your role?
Right. I mean, that's really both. In answer to your question, I think these, this is what I say about really layered experiences, because, you know, you can have that aunt or that sister-in-law, you know, who is, or any relative for that matter, who does have to brag about the children going to Yale and how well the family's doing. And yet at the same time show up in very difficult times, you know, and that's the sort of, you know, multi-layered facet of these characters. So when I prepared for it, it was sort of, yes to all of it, and unapologetically, because there is this sort of, pride in terms of the immigrant experience as well. And I'm, you know, from what I gather from the episode, you know, my character did grow up in India and came here for a better life. And so part of that are certain achievements that she saw as better, you know. And yet the connection to family and family showing up was very real for her as well, you know.
I think also Sonali had a growth where she wasn't accepting of Meera's character. So, you know, I think somewhere she was also she had barriers that she had to break through.
Yeah.
And I think,
and also, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Continue.
Oh, okay. No, I was saying the fact that they show up in the way that they show up, right? In the end, that the whole family shows up. You know, I felt that very real, because I have a very large extended family here, and they've shown up in the most amazing ways, you know, in terms of, in the most challenging of times and in the best of times, you know.
Right.
So.
And in my head, I feel like your character would have shown up anyway if Sonali would have allowed it. Right at the beginning. I mean, it's just like a relationship has two people.
So if you guys can maybe speak to us about the experience of working with the rest of the crew. Did you guys get to see more of the ensemble crew, or was it just mainly Raymond and Caitlin? What was the experience like on the set daily? We talked about Deborah a little bit, but all the fans want to know, like, how cool is it to be on the set of Quantum Leap and what goes on?
Yeah. Well, all of our scenes were basically with Raymond and Caitlin. I didn't get to meet the rest of, obviously, because of being in a different time zone, or what is it called? Not time zone, but
different century. Different decade?
Right. Right. Time and space reality is what I wanted to say. Yeah, like I said, they're amazing. Raymond is, he has the ability to get really, really authentic, but real. And like I could see in the kitchen scenes, when I get hurt and things like that. I mean, I could see the tears well up in him, just like take one, so just an amazing actor. You don't see that very often, especially with male actors, that he does the action stuff so well too. Really talented. And Caitlin, is so fun. She's exactly who she is. Like, I mean, she literally comes from the same background as her character, right? But she's so cool. She's ridiculously cool. I was just like, can we keep talking, please? Because I want to know everything about you. So, yeah, really great set.
They're just wonderful. They're kind, coming in as a guest star. You always wonder what a set is going to be like. And I think what's really they were just inclusive. As soon as you walked on, hello, they introduce themselves. They tell you who they are. And that just makes for a better ensemble for that episode, because really we're creating an ensemble for each episode. They're the regulars. They're there all the time. But because of their inclusivity, the way they welcomed, the way they were able to, be open to playing and collaborating was really wonderful. And I've always learned it trickles from the top down, and Raymond and Caitlin are just such nice people. So being on the set of Quantum Leap is really fun. It's they created a beautiful set. I'm sure it's always so different, right? But they created some beautiful set pieces for this, and you felt the love and the energy that they have, and just real pros, real wonderful actors to work with too, that can just drop in and tap in to what's needed in the moment, and even the crew around us, the director, our director Deborah and Adrita, and just the whole crew and everyone, they look after you. So it's a good set.
I just wanted to say that it comes through in the final product, because I feel that the scenes that Sonali and Ben have in this episode, it's some of the best Ben stuff we've gotten all season. And you guys are in part to thank for that. So thank you. But this is, I think, a standout episode for Raymond. And I don't think that he could have risen to that level without having good guest stars to rise with. So as a fan, thank you for giving me the feels. This episode made me cry both times I've watched it so far, and it will again, I'm sure.
Wow.
So it was wonderful.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. He's such a wonderful actor. He's such a wonderful actor.
I think it helped me too, where, he was able to tap into his emotions so easily. It helped me a lot too. And in the last scene, I think that it was literally the last scene we shot, the last scene that we had. And so I think that sort of also worked for me, where it was like saying goodbye. I was literally saying goodbye to somebody that I'd been working for 5 days constantly, and I felt like we had created this bond. And he was playing my son in my head. Even though he was playing my daughter, but, and I think that, and I think there was a lot of input from Deborah in that last scene too. So she really helped in bringing that. But yeah, I saw the emotion in his face. It was like, it inspired me too.
I guess. I mean, we've spoken a lot about Quantum Leap, but what are you guys doing currently? Where else can we expect to see you now that you're on my radar? I want to see everything you're in, because I had such a good time with this episode. Nandini, why don't we start with you?
Well, I have an episode of Night Court coming out. I know.
Excellent.
It's a smaller role, but I had a lot of fun on that set too. They're hilarious.
So you're all about the reboots at the moment.
It was so much fun.
That's right.
I know, isn't that true? NBC, a reboot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's where it all ends, though. It's completely different.
So we're going to see you on Mac and PI now.
Well, that would be nice. And I'm trying to. I've written something that I'm trying to make into. Well, it's right now a pilot. It's a TV pilot. It's called My Indian Mother, and I've been actually trying to sell it. I do have a literary manager, but I'm also trying to write it into a version of a feature because I think that that's easier to create. I mean, Meera and her husband write and produce and direct movies, and I think, well, she's going to talk about it. But so I think that I want to go the same route of independent films, and so I'm in the process of trying to create a version of it as a feature film. So we'll see. Maybe it'll make it on the big screen. I'm hoping.
Best of luck with that.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah. We have to talk about that, Meera. You're going to help me, maybe, hopefully.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, of course. Always.
Yeah.
What do you have coming up, Meera?
Right now, I just finished filming an episode of SWAT, which was a really nice, action-packed scene and a standoff with the SWAT team, which is always, super fun. So I'm looking forward to that. That'll be on CBS. I'm not sure of the air date. There's a film, that I'm in called Four Samosas, which is actually now out on AMC Plus, and it is going to be on Hulu soon. It was in the theaters, released by IFC Films, and so that's out right now, and also on all kinds of different. I think Miss India America, it's a film I wrote and co-wrote and produced that my husband, who's a writer, director, actor, directed and co-wrote, and that is on Hulu. It's a comedy.
I was in it.
And Nandini was in it. Yeah. And she was very good. And I was in it too.
Yeah.
But that's how we met.
You hired me.
We hired Nandini. So there's a connection that goes quite a ways back. I'm working on a collection of essays. So a collection of essays that have to do with being raised as a South Asian American, the immigrant sort of, overarching umbrella, or arching, whether it's an arch or an arc, kind of both, that sort of experience of family and, loss and connection and what is that American dream. So that's happening, and a couple of films too that are in development. So it's good. Yeah.
Oh, it's great to hear that you guys are so busy, so active.
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing that. And, where I guess people can find you, or our listeners can find you on the socials, on the Instagram and on the Facebook.
Yeah. I mean, my Instagram handle is at Meera Simhan. So it's very, very easy.
Mine's
just my name.
Actually Nandini Minocha, at Nandini Minocha again.
So there you go.
Not very hard on Facebook.
Yeah.
Good. We like that. It's been terrific. It's been terrific talking to you, hearing about your time on the show. Thank you both, Nandini, Meera. Thank you for your time and for joining us.
Oh my God. Thank you so much. It's really wonderful. It's really wonderful to be here. And, thanks for watching and having me.
Thank you.
Us.
So, wow, that was a good episode. Those were really good guests to have. I'm really liking this new style. Matt figured that out because we're spending way too much time editing and not enough time uploading. So that went well, I thought.
Quantity
over
quality.
It was really cool to find out about. Yeah, we found out more about cousin Paddy and the woman who played the mom in this episode, which was really cool. What did you guys think of the mom in this episode, and just like the whole family in general, including the extended family, like the cousins and stuff? What do you think about those characters? Roger.
Well, I think that anybody who's ever been in a family restaurant, you can relate to the fact that there's usually a parent running the show, whether they're out front of the house or they're in the back in the kitchen. It's not a surprise. That was one of the things that kind of made me laugh, was the point when they got down to two people running the kitchen, and it's like, we didn't show the rest of the family in the restaurant. I mean, generally you'd have somebody be, the waitress out front, or a busboy or girl, just the whole idea. And dishwasher, who's washing the dishes? So two of them, mom can do a lot, but she can't do it all.
But she was trying to do it all.
Ghost town.
You stop that. You stop that. You're too slow. I do it.
That's right. Exactly. And I kind of understand that. I mean, having cooked a bit with my own mother, just at home here, that's enough. But you definitely get that feeling that, the fact that there was family involved so much and wanting to do everything. I thought the actors who played that group of people, they had a good working dynamic together.
Yeah,
very believable.
It very much felt like they were family. It did. So I appreciated that.
Good casting choices too.
Yeah.
And it is a bit sad, actually, that, sometimes, one person is the glue of the whole family, like in this case the father had been, and that this rift had sort of materialized since his death, especially because the mother had been harboring some resentment about the fact that those cousins had been doing so well and seeing any success as being them lording it over her. I thought that was extremely believable. I've seen things like that happen as well. I thought that this was just a very believable family, even if it started verging on stereotypes.
Yeah, I enjoyed the family dynamic and everyone involved, and I think everybody did a great job. No one stood out to me as like out of place or bad acting at all. And the directions also is a big part of that. Directions not only where to put the camera and what you're looking for, it's also speaking to the actors about your vision for the episode. So job well done again by Deborah. Of course, I'm a big fan of Deborah. So. Roger, you mentioned working in restaurants, and I'm sure you went through the same kind of couple things that I did when you're watching the episode. You mentioned the lack of staff. 2 people running a restaurant. Now, I've done it once or twice because I worked in restaurants for 23 years. That might give away my age, but I started at, let's say, at 7 a.m. No, let's say at 7 years old.
You're a masochist,
I started young,
Albie.
but not really. But I have done a restaurant with 2 people. There was like a flu going around and everybody was just out. So I was a kitchen manager, but I was running the front of the house because there was no front of the house managers. And we had one cook, so I would help them cook, and then I'd bring the food out, and then I would take the money. But very rarely can you run a restaurant like that. And there's no servers, and even though it's like family style or buffet style, buffet style, you still need somebody to bring the drinks. You still need somebody to bus the tables. You still need somebody to give the people their bill to pay. You still need somebody to take the cash. So that was odd.
Yeah, in a small family restaurant, if you're only, if you've only got 8 tables in a restaurant, it's a whole different story than if you're running what obviously looked to be a fairly large buffet, all you can eat type thing. And even in, you get to that point, that's where a lot of those places do the bulk of their business. They have a large dining room that, may seat 40 people. And the idea is that they want to turn those 40 people as much as possible to make money on it. I thought it was interesting the little call out to Groupon that they had called it something different, but I'm sure that at some point Groupon will get their grease out of it, But
that was fun.
Idea. I mean, to kind of go back a bit and make people think about things like that maybe they hadn't thought of through the pandemic. It's like we said earlier. Restaurants have gone through a lot in the last couple of years, and hopefully this will kind of give people the idea that maybe they should go out and support their local places or find something new or look for who's promoting what this week.
One thing I noticed that stuck out to me, having lived in restaurants for decades, basically, was the hoods weren't on. The exhaust hoods were not on. Normally in a kitchen, you would not be able to hear the other person talk unless you were screaming. Usually, sometimes the hoods get so loud, it's just like you're at an airport with constant jet engines going. I learned over the years to read lips just so I could understand what people were saying. So that's a skill I picked up out of the restaurants. But yeah, they were just speaking normal voice, and it was dead quiet, like when you're shutting a restaurant down on Christmas Day and it's eerie. It was that quiet. But I guess nobody wants their speakers blasted out while they're watching network television and trying to you'll have to subtitle it basically. But that really did stand out.
The other one I got a kick out of was the younger daughter going out to buy groceries. Anybody who's ever worked at of any kind, all that stuff comes. You have suppliers that you're buying that from, and then, if you're behind in your bills, they're not bringing the goodies for you to cook. And I thought
the first time that stuck out.
Hard to believe, bit if you'd ever had anything to do with working in a kitchen in a restaurant.
Yeah, that stood out to me the first time. Was why is she buying groceries? That's not going to be enough. That's like 4 bags. But then when Addison and Ben are looking in the office and all the overdue invoices, their produce people are not going to come unless you pay that bill. The truck where you get all the food from is not going to come if you're behind on your bills. They give you a little bit, but not much. And so she'd have to go out shopping, but she'd have many more boxes and bags of stuff, I think, for 200 people coming.
Yeah.
So.
All I could think, though, was, ew, the mother has sliced her hand open and she's still cooking. And that bandage did not look hygienic at all. She should have had like proper bandages on it and then gloves over the top of that. And I could just see so much blood ending up in the food. No, don't do that.
Yeah, you definitely got to wear like a rubber glove or some type of glove over that. Otherwise, 1, it'll get infected, and 2, the bandage and blood will get in the food. I've seen a couple of Band-Aids go out in food before, but that is kind of a thing that happens in restaurants. The first day I started cooking on the cook's line, because I think the first 6 months, a year, I was dishwasher and busboy, and then I moved up to cook. And the first day on the line, I stabbed my assistant kitchen manager in the arm with my chef's knife, because I'm very spinny, and by that point I was, very confident about walking on the wet tile floor, and I could like dance and walk on water, and I would spin around, but I forgot, or I didn't know at the time it was a bad idea to spin around with a chef's knife in your hand. So he was like, and there was blood, and we had to get out the first aid kit, and that was my first day cooking. So it does happen often.
Well, and there's also the whole idea that that's why the health department is out there checking in places. Because there's an awful lot of restaurants that, well, let's just say that there's a reason the health department is doing so well in business.
Yeah. And
I won't say who I worked for in this episode, but the health department usually took bribes, and that's how we stayed open.
Yeah.
It was cheaper than fixing the problems. So what were you saying, Hayden?
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, I think it was Kathy was the landlord, if Kathy really wanted them shut down, she could have just called the health inspectors, but I think maybe there might have been a huge fine associated to the owner if that happened. So I don't know why, but I really thought her plan was stupid. And I actually was wondering, did they cut important stuff out? Because ultimately, all she really had to do was evict them. She didn't need to burn the place down. Mm-hmm. And it seems like a pretty
or pull a gun out.
Yeah. I mean,
that was
she had all the recourse in the world to be able to just evict them if they're not paying their bills. But what does she decide to do? She decides to burn the place down instead, get back what's not going to be all of her initial investment for the insurance, and get arrested in the process. I actually think that they cut out a subplot. So the guy that Ben called, Kevin, the potential investor, as Addison had said, invested in the place in the original history after it had burnt down, so was interested in the area. And then just nothing materialized of that thread. I actually think that maybe the initial plan was that he and Kathy might have been in cahoots, and that Kathy might have wanted to maximize her profits and remove what she considered to be problematic people who weren't paying her, while at the same time Kevin being able to get the property a bit cheaper because of the fact that it's just the land once it's burnt down. So it wouldn't have surprised me if that was maybe the initial plan, but then for whatever reason they decided, no, we're just going to make Kathy the only bad guy here. And yeah, I think I would have preferred that better, and I think it would have made more sense, not just such a stupid plan that Kathy had. But I don't know, I could be wrong. Anyway, sorry, Roger, you were trying to interrupt me before.
No, actually, I want to say, Hayden, that you're opening the door to a concern that a number of people have raised to me. And that is not just with this episode, but with the entire show at this point. And that is that oftentimes the scriptwriters don't seem to fully research what they're looking at, and don't fully seem to develop a coherent plot. Because, yeah, you're right. Anybody who's been in the restaurant industry, you could certainly, as a competitor, you could have come in and just made an anonymous call to the health department and said, these people have health problems. They have a rat problem, and not uncommon in a city like Portland where, you have older structures, and all of a sudden, the health department shows up and, well, your restaurant's closed. And, it could have been the same thing, would have been much easier, much less costly when you talk about the budget, blowing up that building, for example. That you could have, the health department could have showed up and the restaurant could have been closed and that would have been it. The fact that they weren't doing well, they owed money to landlords, owed money to suppliers. It's obvious, again, you could have taken a little bit more time, talked to somebody who's actually worked in the restaurant industry, and maybe had a more compelling story out of it all without resorting to the pyrotechnics. I have a serious problem that goes back to the original pilot episode with the earthquake in San Francisco. The whole idea of that tunnel under the bay, yeah, it's there. But I have friends who were there that night, and I know that all those stations were locked down tight in San Francisco, and there was no way that you could have walked through that tunnel to Oakland. It just couldn't have happened. You would have been discovered. The BART district people actually had people down in the tunnel inspecting it that night. Just if somebody had bothered to do a little research, they would have found out that maybe they could have come up with a little better story about even just stealing a boat to go across the bay to Oakland would have been easier than going through that tunnel. And again, I understand it's all, you want to set a certain dramatic tone in what you do, but if a little bit more research could be done, I understand they're on a deadline. I understand they want to get these scripts done as fast as possible. But here's a great example in this episode where, again, if somebody had worked in restaurants, in a restaurant that's facing all these challenges, and I'm sure there would have been any number of places in Los Angeles they could have talked to about, a restaurant having troubles, even a family restaurant having troubles, that could have come up with a more plausible and a less threatening scenario. I mean, you want to talk about that, the whole, you don't have to have somebody pull a gun in every episode to have drama. I mean, there's plenty of drama that goes on in families without it. So, again, you kind of opened the door, so there I am.
I know if any landlord I had pulled a gun on me, I would leave. I wouldn't stay there. I'd say that's an unsafe property. But going back to Rasmussen, he did look kind of shady for just a restaurateur. Yeah. And especially the way the angles and the actor that was cast in it. But I want to give the writers the benefit of the doubt, because that, I guess, C story, if you look at it that way, it wasn't really going anywhere. That subplot within the Leap, it didn't really resolve or go anywhere. But watching it, I thought it furthered one of the theories we came up with or talked about in a previous episode, was that Leaper X is actually leaping around trying to sabotage what Ben is doing. Whether Leaper X is doing that for good or bad, I don't know. But it turned out he got food poisoning in this episode, which seems like something that could easily be done by a Leaper X to stop him from helping Ben save the restaurant in that way. So then, of course, Ben and Addison had to shift tactics and go a different direction, and it worked out great. But maybe in the original timeline, the restaurateur, Rasmussen, was integral to saving the day, let's say. But then Leaper X just gave him some bad fish.
Yeah.
Both pilots can't eat the fish.
Get into, in the original history, didn't the restaurant burn down overnight?
Yes.
Yeah, instead of the daytime. Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, where do you, if you really want to get into it, there's another one that Leaper X could have actually set the gas explosion at a time he knew they were all going to be out, and.
Yeah. Or it might have even been Ben's intervention, because as we know, we found out Kathy's the one who lit the fire, having this new promotion where they are expecting quite a lot of income. If Kathy doesn't want them to succeed, then she's going to move up her plan to burn the place down. It's a stupid plan, but it makes sense that she'd want to move it up so that they can't then succeed.
All she was going to get was going to be the profits from whatever they made that night. They were still going to owe her the full amount. And so burning the restaurant down to get out of it for the insurance money, which was the ultimate goal for her, it had nothing to do with that debt. I mean, as we saw afterwards, the whole idea of, after the fire, well, any insurance money I get is going to go to me. You still owe me the debt, and that would still be the case.
Another thing, $30,000 behind. How many months behind in rent? $30,000. I don't know. This is 2009 in Portland, right? So maybe, but that's a lot of money. So how much a month? You're a professor at maths, Hayden. So how many months at what price does it seem most likely to you that they were behind on those the rent payments?
Well, rent's pretty expensive.
So they're making $5,000 a night on a good night. So if you multiply that times, say, average of 30, you come up with what? 25,000 a month, right? That their profits would be, or is that just their cash intake?
Yeah, but
that's an odd way to, because the whole idea was that they were hoping to, because of this promotion, to do $5,000. And that was a 2-for-1. And it was only because of the promotion that they were doing that. If you think about restaurants, you want a full house, but if you're only 30,000 behind, even if you say that was the rent per month back then at a time in a restaurant, I had a friend who had a business in San Francisco that I know what his rent was a month down in the Fisherman's Wharf area for a very small piece of property, and it was much more than that. And it just
so it adds up.
I think it was, again, it was a nice figure to try and impress people, but it was like maybe it was a little optimistic. Maybe a little bit of research to get an idea of what reality actually is. But there it is, reality and truth.
Yeah.
Some of the things I did like about the restaurant aspects of this episode was I love that Diego was falling asleep standing up. I remember, like I mentioned, I basically lived in a restaurant for a couple decades. When I worked graveyard shift, I used to sleep a lot. We had a booth in a training closet. So after all my line was stocked, everything was clean, everything was done, I still had 3 or 4 more hours to my shift. And we'd only get the occasional people coming in, so I would just sleep until the waitress would wake me up and say, we have an order.
You're one of them.
So that was, and then, of course...
when I managed the pizza shop unofficially, because I was the one who would really run things, but our manager would often get caught sleeping in the toilet, and I'd have to manage while he disappeared for all that time. So I'm not impressed, Albie. You're one of them. Sleeping on the job.
I used to be, hey, this might impress you. Diego was falling asleep standing up, and I used to do the same thing. I would hold on to my spatula with just that kind of fell into the grease trap area, and that would be my handle, and I would sleep standing up until that printer went off, and I'd wake up and I'd cook the food.
Well, I did give him
So.
props for that, for having Diego as a character, because one of the things that I've always gotten a big laugh out of, and Tony Bourdain probably talked about this better than anybody else, was that if it wasn't for the Latins working in kitchens in America, we wouldn't be eating in restaurants. You know, the fact that so
100%.
many people who come from the Latin countries have found employment, legal or not, in restaurant kitchens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, the wages are so low, it's ridiculous. So, I mean, you gotta do what you gotta do, I guess.
The one I didn't find believable was the one who had to run off to go to the shoe sale. That just didn't. That just didn't ring true to me.
That does happen, in my experience, especially like let's say 2009. Maybe the going rate for a kitchen help like that was $8 an hour. So there's nothing you can say to make people stay if they don't want to stay. So, and the fact that it's a small group, a family group, and he works there, probably they're not going to fire him over that. And it is a sneaker sale, you know.
Well, yeah, and we did get a Nike reference. So again, there's more of your Portland, coming to play. So
I did like the line that food is the only art form that is appreciated by all five senses. And yeah, I guess that is true. And some people just have a knack for it and some people don't. So it is really an art form. So I agree with that. I've got a funny story for you, actually, from when I was at the pizza shop. And this was one of the days when the manager had fallen asleep on the toilet. And somehow I was the only one either in the front or the back doing any work. And anyway, this woman came to the front desk and I took her order and she ordered this. I remember it was a spinach and feta calzone. And I took the order and then this horror went through me because I'm like, I don't know how to make a calzone. So, yeah, I knew like basically what you do. You get the pizza base and then you fill up half of it and you fold it over and you put a couple of toppings on it and put it in the oven. So I knew that, but I'm like, all right, well, what are the ingredients that go in it? And I had a look and we needed basil and I'm like, crap, can't find the basil. All right, basil pesto, that's close enough. So I lathered the basil pesto on the top and some garlic and loaded up with cheese and put it into the oven. I'm like, well, if she doesn't like it, she can get her money back. I don't care. But the funny thing was, the next day the woman did come back and she said that was the best calzone I've ever had. I could have bought it on Lygon Street, which Lygon Street is a famous street in Melbourne known for their restaurants and their fantastic food. Yeah, I could have gotten one from Lygon Street and it wouldn't have been that good. And so that made me feel chuffed that I just kind of winged it and it turned out so good. But the funny thing was she ordered another one. And this particular day, the manager was working. So he made it. And about half an hour after she bought it, she came back and said, this is disgusting. He's the only one allowed to make my calzones now.
So could we talk a little bit about some of what is different between the original and the new Quantum Leap? Obviously, the B story and the A story. We had the B story before, but maybe not as strong and maybe not as much a part of every episode. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are along the line of that, because some of the things that I think made the original series special have kind of fallen by the wayside. This was a good episode, had a good example. One of the things that, if you recall in the original series, was the whole idea whenever Sam was talking to Al, there was a lot of, who are you talking to? Or, or we need to go use the restroom or the head or whatever. It's the whole idea of, Sam is going to talk to Al, but it's not something that openly they would do in front of others. I mean, and it seems that a lot more often Ben is talking to Addison or vice versa with no regard to what's going on around them. I mean, I don't know if it's just that maybe just the way the overall direction of the show is set, but it seems like there's a lot less concern for who are you talking to?
Well, it has been picked up occasionally when Ben is talking to himself, but I do agree with you that it does seem few and far between, and there are numerous instances through the series so far where you could argue, why isn't that person noticing that Ben's talking to himself? But I think that a part of it is they're trying to get across this idea that each person is so self-involved, they're not really noticing what's going on around them. They're only noticing what internally they're dealing with. So, like, they might notice it, but they just might not care. If you know what I mean. So, because I do think that the world has gone a lot more selfish in the time since the original Quantum Leap series, and I do think that people are less likely to, I suppose, call out behavior that looks odd.
People are less present, even in these past episodes that take place where, isn't it still 2009? I don't know what's going on. But I actually did notice in this episode because, like, Ben talks to himself as well, and he said, "Well, what was the Leapy's name?
I don't remember.
Dee Dee or something like that."
Yes.
And he was like, "Oh, I'm Dee Dee or whatever." So it's almost like he's in a holodeck video game, and he's like giving a little bit of commentary to himself, which is for us while he's playing the game. It seems like he doesn't care if he's found out or not. Which kind of makes sense, I mean, he's there to do a job and he gets it done and he helps out people. So what's the difference if somebody just is like,
or it could be like this theory I had about everything being a computer simulation. The NPCs, the non-playable characters, they're not going to care if Ben's talking to himself. So exactly.
They don't pay attention. Not unless you let the program run for months at a time, and then people start to notice, or the NPCs start to notice that you change your tire without touching it.
Here's an example, though. If you think about this whole episode and the family dynamic that's involved, I don't know about you, but if I started talking to myself, my mother would definitely have questions. She would want to know, who are you talking to? What's the conversation about? I mean, it's one thing if I'm wearing earbuds or something and having a conversation on a cell phone, but that's 2023. That's not 1979. It's the whole idea of okay, people around you. If you're genuinely someone who's in distress, they kind of pay attention to what's going on. And if you start talking to yourself, okay, maybe it's something. We need to take Roger's side and understand that maybe he's having a tough time, but when you're doing it a lot more like Ben is, it's the kind of thing that, maybe a little to get caught would be an interesting bit of drama in an upcoming episode. Because I'll guarantee you, the next episode, being on board a battleship, if he's in a combat situation and he's talking to himself, oh yeah, somebody is going to take notice and is going to remove him from duty.
Well, apparently,
very quickly. So
apparently Leaper X is in the next episode too, and I don't know if it's going to be the case like we saw in the Wild West episode where they just could see each other straight away, or if something had to happen in the meantime which caused them to see it and we just weren't privy to how it happened. But it could be like in, I think it was Return of the Evil Leaper, and Zoe and Aaliyah notice Sam talking to himself and they're like, wait, did he just talk to himself? Wait, Lothos? Oh, it's Sam! Maybe something like that could happen. So, yeah, I do agree with you. The thing that actually I've been finding a bit strange to get my head around, it's something that people have been whinging about a lot, and I've told people to stop whinging about it, but it's the issue of the waiting room. But this particular episode actually made me think about it again. Because, so, Dottie has full recollection of the person that leapt into them. But how could that be the case if they haven't been bounced out to a waiting room and aren't seeing a mirror? And, I mean, Dottie was specifically talking about seeing something in the mirror which wasn't them. So if it's just the case that, like they've been alluding to in this series, that when Ben leaps, or Ian or Martinez or whoever it is, leaps into someone, that they kind of have to knock on the door and get the, permission to enter, and then they're just in control for a while the other one is comatose or just out of it for that time. Yeah, but somehow now Dottie's able to have full awareness of who's actually leapt into them. So that's something I've been trying to wrestle my head around. Maybe it's just that maybe there's like a waiting room inside their head where they're keeping track of everything that's going on, but this is only subconsciously, not consciously, so they don't have any conscious memory of it. And yeah, they might actually, have some sort of a recollection of what the leaper felt at the time. I don't know. That's just something that I've been trying to wrestle my head around.
Thing that I've been thinking about with the whole series, and it kind of will go into the original series as well, is that every time history has changed, for good or for bad, as part of a leap, you get a new reality where the new timeline comes along and something's different. And if you think about it, the whole idea of the new series exists because Sam leapt into magic, and because magic is part of Quantum Leap because of Sam Beckett's leap. If Sam had leapt into somebody else, that character might have been the one who was part of Project Quantum Leap. Could have been Doc from the Vietnam episode. Anybody. Magic just happened to be the one who had ended up. And so if you think about, and I know this is controversial, I know a lot of people don't like to hear about it, but the concept of the multiverse being that if you turned right instead of turning left, there's a whole series of realities based on that alternative. And if you think about it, where Quantum Leap has gone, this whole series could be nothing more than an alternative based off of the original series, because there's so many things. I mean, the whole thing about Sam going to visit with Beth, and the fact that, that there were daughters, that's how we have Janice. Whereas in the original timeline, there was no Janice, so you get so much of this, and so much of all these things that, to me, that's a good way to explain why we don't see the waiting room, because again, it's a different reality. And the fact that the project is in Los Angeles, in what looks to be a location that is totally different than it was originally, and has so many differences. I mean, remember in the original series, there were references to power, that they could only get so much power to do things, like in Pool Hall Blues. Al refers to, okay, you got this many minutes of power left, Sam, this is what we're going to do. And now you don't see any of that. You don't see, the fact that they're in a major metropolitan area, and, people come and go out of the project like nobody's business. Whereas before at Stallion's Gate, it was locked down tight. I mean, other than Styles leaving the project in Killing Time, we never really saw anything. It was very much a secure location, very much a what would you call it, a black government project, and the fact that originally there was a committee that they had to report to, and we've seen some of that, but very little in this new series. So if you think about that, that's a good way to explain away this whole bit about no waiting room, is that it's not the same Quantum Leap as it was in the original series, but it's an offshoot, an alternate reality from that original time.
And I don't have a problem.
Before Sam left.
I don't have a problem with that. But we can also surmise, that this is 30 years after the original series. There has been quite a lot of technological advancement in that time as well, even in our reality. So another way you could wrap your head around it too is, yes, there's the possibility of all those multiple universes, but also the fact that with the technological advancements, they've looked at Sam's theories as a kernel and what they did in their original way, but then have built on it and thought, right, maybe this way might be better, or maybe we can get around it this way, or something along those lines too. So I think the passage of time is also important. And the other thing as well, you were talking about all the multiple timelines that existed, and I think we might have discussed this a little bit when we did the podcast about the lost ending and how I thought that the whole series with that ending would have been a good way to bookend how it's really Al's story and how he, became someone who could actually be in a long-term relationship with Beth. He would have needed to experience all those things that went on in every single timeline. And subconsciously, he has experienced them, and subconsciously, he's learnt from them, even if he only really remembers what's in the current timeline too. So, yeah, you are right. All these things definitely happened, and I think that they all had to happen. And, yeah... Sorry, I'm trying to make a point here, but I do agree with you that, so many different things are going on that, yeah, there is going to be some sort of a mix-up, some sort of change. Not everything is going to be exactly the same as what we expected.
It also could explain why we haven't seen or heard anything of Donna. Again, being in an alternate reality from the original series, again, it's a whole other reason why she's not part of it. Not to say that it isn't, but it's just it's an easy explanation for me.
Well, I think the bigger issue overall is there is a lot of talk in the fan community about the differences between the original series and this series, and a lot of people are having trouble enjoying this new series because it is so different from the original series. And I think it's just time to call it and say, you know what, this is not the original series. This is a new show. That's like someone who, say, loves Star Trek, the original series, saying Deep Space Nine is different from the original series. Yes, completely, totally different. Takes place in the same universe, But if you stop yourself from enjoying something because it's different than what you're used to, I think it just hurts you. I think it's time for everybody to just say, this is a new show. Do I like it or not? If I do, let's hop on board and forget about the differences and just enjoy what the writers, producers, and all the creators are giving us, which is a great, great show. So things that are different don't bother me, and I enjoy it. I really do like the differences. If it was too similar to the original series, then it would just, people would be saying, oh, they're just ripping off the original series. They're just doing the same things over again. Why am I going to watch this? There's no differences. So I think they're in a Kobayashi Maru and there's no way to win. But I think they're doing the right thing by making it different, making it unique, making it its own thing. It doesn't take away at all from the original series. We still have those on Blu-ray. But it's time to just either, you like it or not. But I'm loving it. I'm really loving it.
But Albie too, we don't have to forget about the previous series and pretend that it didn't exist in the context of this one. Part of the fun that we're having is trying to come up with the links between them, trying to see how they got from point A at the end of Mirror Image up to point B, which was the start of the new series. It doesn't have to be exactly the same, but I'm sure we can come up with explanations on why things are different. And yeah.
Oh, sure.
And that's, I think, part of the fun.
A suggestion that somebody made, which I think would be a lot of fun in next season, would be to take a page from the Star Trek history and to actually do an episode where Ben leaps into a Sam Beckett leap. And the whole idea is, why is he there? Is he there for the same purpose? Is he there for a totally different purpose? But it's the whole idea of you could have, pick any leap you like, and the whole point of Ben and Addison being now part of that leap could be really interesting, because again, as we're reminded, success or failure has nothing to do with leaping. We were told that on several occasions in the past, and I would have to think that that's one thing they would want to stay true to, because it might actually make for good drama to have a leap that Ben is not successful, but still leaps. Because it might be something that you might have to come back to another time and fix. It might be that Leaper X is going to interfere with something, and Sam will, Ben will have to come back, and we'll have to make a correction on that, or maybe the whole idea that Leaper X's influence is actually what he was there to begin with to set right. So there's lots of different opportunities, and I think that a Ben and Addison leaping into a Sam and Al leap would be pretty good, and you could do it much as Star Trek Deep Space Nine did with Trials of Tribulation.
Deborah Pratt has been talking about the potential that Quantum Leap has for being a franchise, and she's been talking about the possibility of there being feature films that are about Sam Beckett. And it could easily be, like you're both alluding to, that, yes, what we're looking at might be a different incarnation of Quantum Leap. They might be completely separate well, they exist in the same universe, but they might be different galaxies, if you like. Then there might be some sort of crossover somewhere along the way, but they could exist completely parallel to each other as well. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, I'm sure we'll talk about that and much more, but we have another interview to get to. This is another one of those dual interviews. So we'll do that, and then we'll be right back, and I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit more about Pretty Little Lattes and the rest of this episode.
Yeah.
So we'll be back.
Hello, Leapers. It's me, Chris, and I am here with Matt Dale. And this time out, we are interviewing two of the guest stars from the Quantum Leap episode Family Style. Please welcome to the mic with us, Laura Niemi and Anisha Jagannathan. Laura, Anisha, welcome to the Quantum Leap podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So, this is the second of our family style interviews, and we're doing them family style. So thank you for agreeing to appear together. It's very apropos for the episode.
I love this because Anisha and I probably will be talking more than we did even when we were on set.
Yeah.
Because our characters were separated.
Yeah, absolutely.
We noticed that. We booked this in before we'd seen the episode, just based on the cast photos. So it was a bit of a risk. And then, we did notice Laura.
I love it. I love it.
Great to introduce you to each other.
And here we go, making connections. That's what we do here in this podcast universe and Quantum Leap fandom. So if you guys want to just start, we usually like to start with some general background about, how you got started in the biz and what brought you to the role that you got on Quantum Leap. So why don't we start with you, Laura?
Oh, okay. Well, I've been an actor for a very long time. I'm a native Angelino. I kind of grew up in the biz. My mom was a producer. And I honestly didn't think I was going to be ending up in the business. I was kind of a rebellious teenager, so I was in rock and roll for a while, and then I got very involved in theater, and eventually realized that I'm here in LA, that TV is what pays the bills, and just got heavily into television and film. So I've been doing it for a long time, and just and this character and this show was like a real coup for me because I just come off a series and I'd been on NBC, so it was like a perfect fit for me. But this is a character that I normally don't play. You saw the episode. Obviously, so this was very exciting for me because I'm, normally a little bit more likable in at least recently. That's what's been happening. So, and as the viewers will see, this is Kathy is not so nice. No. So, and I was very excited because my family's a huge Quantum Leap fans, and so I got this part right before Thanksgiving. So during Thanksgiving, we as a family started binge watching a lot of the older episodes, the Marilyn Monroe one from the original series, which I had never seen. And then, some of this new series, which is just so cool. And so I was really excited.
Well, that's terrific. We love to hear that you guys, that Laura, you're a fan of the original series. That speaks to the leapers in all of us. How about you, Anisha? I mean, were you familiar with Quantum Leap before you booked the role, and how did you come to the series?
I wasn't familiar actually with Quantum Leap before the role. I knew that this series was a reboot, but I hadn't watched the original series. My parents loved it, so they were kind of telling me, "Oh my God, you're doing the new Quantum Leap," and I was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And same thing as Laura. When I got the role, we all binged the new series, and it's just so exciting and so fun, and I was so looking forward to being a part of and I feel like this episode is different from other episodes in that it's it has action and stuff, but I feel like not like the other episodes in terms of, I don't know, I was told this was more like the original series, this episode of kind of small, intimate family members and their issues. And I think that, I mean, felt really blessed to be a part of this one because it just had a lot of heart. So, yeah.
This definitely comes across as the smallest of the episodes so far, and I mean that in a complimentary way. It was obviously what was intended and came through. I guess a lot of that comes from the relationship between the characters and the relationship between the actors. Could you maybe both talk a bit about that atmosphere relating with the other actors on set?
Oh yeah, it was honestly one of the best experiences I've had on set. Everyone was so, and this sounds so cliche and cheesy, but everyone was very supportive and very welcoming and very nice. Usually I'm like, okay, I'll just stay in my lane and do my thing and try not to cause a fire on set, but I think, but everyone was, extremely welcoming and just made it feel comfortable immediately. And so it felt easy to get to those maybe more emotional places because there was just a shorthand. Also, I just had never been with that many South Asians on set, and that was really refreshing, and it was really fun. And the writer was from a town next to where I grew up from, in the Bay. So it just felt like a completely different experience than I had ever experienced. It felt very familial and I enjoyed every single aspect of it. I never dreaded anything. It was great. Yeah.
And Laura, you had a little bit more of a heavy role in this. Tell us, because you're the part. Well, you're not part of the family.
That's right. And but my experience was great. I mean, look, in my career, for many, many years, I had very few female directors that I worked with. So for me, it's always exciting when I see a female behind the camera. And, I believe it was the DP and we had a lot of female energy behind the scenes, which is lovely, for me. And Deborah is such a talented, and she's the showrunner as well. She's just so talented. So that's always fun when you've got somebody, because when I was on This Is Us, Ken Olin, who was the showrunner as well, would direct episodes, and you always felt like, oh, okay, I'm in really good hands here because they really know the show. They know what they want. Do you know what I mean? So that's always nice. And the writer, I agree with Anisha. It's great to have, South Asian representing this kind of story. So, especially on prime time. So, but in terms of, the set dynamic, I mean, these two leads could not have been more gracious and humble and just so fun to work with. They're just so fun. I mean, there's something to be said about when, I know Raymond's been doing it a long time, but the girl who plays
Caitlin.
Caitlin, yeah, she was talking about when she first got this gig and how, how exciting that was. And so for me as a veteran in this business, hearing somebody when they're just breaking into something it's always so fun. It's exciting. There's, they're excited to be there. Everybody's really, there's an energy, you know what I mean? And on a little side note, I have to say on the coattails of safety on set and whatnot, we had a scene that we shot that had a gun in it, and the way that the way that was handled, I have to say, was very it just made me feel very safe, and they really stopped and really, it was a thing that there was a gun on set, and we stopped and everybody had to look at the gun, and it felt really safe. And I just, I don't know. I just felt like that was something worth noting, because during these times, it's like, especially in the middle of a pandemic, when everybody's rushing, we got to get tested, we got to get this, we got to get that. TV moves so fast that right now that is something that is to be, focused on, obviously. So I loved how they handled that.
Yeah, I had brought that issue up with Marquise Vilson, who played Henry in the episode Salvation or Bust. And he had, there were guns on that set too. And I had brought up that topic with him because it's become such a sensitive issue
right,
due to recent events. And he had mentioned the same thing. So it's nice to hear that all of those protocols are in place, because I got to tell you, Quantum Leap wouldn't be Quantum Leap without a gun-toting villain. And you join a long line of let's just say very broad villainy in Quantum Leap. They're usually pretty over the top. I was just like, this is great. This is so Quantum Leap, because I mean, how many landlords have gun-toting thugs? I just thought it was amazing.
A little twirling of the mustache.
Yeah.
My character's name is Kathy in this, but it wasn't that to begin with. It was Jerry, then it was Terry, and then it became Kathy. And I was like, wait, what's going on? I kind of love the Jerry and Terry. So I guess I was a Kathy and not a Karen. I don't know what I don't know what happened. It was a fun little anecdote from this character.
So, Anisha, how was it working with Nandini? You guys had some great scenes together, and the family dynamic that Matt had spoken about before, and that everybody seems to have embraced in this episode, it seemed so effortless between the two of you. It felt like I was watching an actual family. Can you talk a little bit about the process of coming together with the other actors to pull that off?
Yeah. Well, she was incredible. And I feel like from the get-go, very open, very welcoming, and just immediately has this, like, I feel like emotional shortcut with people. You meet people that are like just very easy to like meld with very quickly, and she has that like empathy and understanding, and she has been in this business longer than I have, and we would talk about kind of her struggles with representation and my struggles with representation, and I think that bonded us pretty quickly as well, because it was just similar experiences, similar difficulties, similar joys, and yeah, she really did feel like family. And I don't know if this is with all South Asians, but it's pretty easy to, like, when you meet another, you're like probably related in some ways, so you're like I don't know, it feels different than meeting anyone else. I'm sure you guys know, if you meet someone from your hometown, it's like, oh my, there's an immediate kind of shortcut. It's kind of the same with meeting her. And we would talk about scenes, like even on set before, and we would talk through them and the emotions of it. And she was very open to, like, you don't get much rehearsal with filming, so she was very open to, like, talking through things and talking about a relationship. And yeah, she was just so supportive and right there, and during the parts that I was kind of scared of. And so was Raymond. He was immediately part of the family. It just felt like he fit in so great into that like Indian sister role. It's hard to describe, but he was just like perfect taking that on. So it felt like intuitive to have that shortcut with both of them, or to have that tie. But I think it says a lot towards their character about how quickly they can open themselves up to people they just met and let them in and collaborate. It was just like, it was fantastic to be around. It was, very welcoming.
Chris and I both talked about the fact that this is a tearjerker. This is an episode that made us cry. And for me, the moment that starts is when Nandini turns to you and gives you the opportunity to take over as the head chef. From that point till the end of the episode, the waterworks are on. And I just really wanted to understand more about that precisely. You just give each other a look, and it's so wonderful. And I wonder, was that particularly early on in the filming, or had you had a chance to build up that relationship before you did that sequence? Because that's outstanding.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that was actually towards the end of filming, and we had been able to talk and get to know each other. And yeah, that scene was very special. I think for like I can speak on what I was going through in that scene was, I get pretty homesick here, and there's not a lot of community that I've built here in terms of like not a lot of South Asians that I know in LA, and I think seeing just the physical like family come together in that moment was so emotional and so I don't know, it felt very like you could feel like the acceptance like radiating off of them, and that moment in terms of her like passing the baton on to her, I feel like that's a lot of kids' dreams, is that their parents kind of trust them with their futures and their choices. And I think especially in our community there is like there's a stereotype that is true most of the time of parents wanting the kids to go a certain direction, whether it's in terms of like safety, be safe in your career, or like we want you to be secure, and I think that moment of like the mom fully trusting my character, the daughter, is something that you don't really, it's a very small moment, but it's so rare. I feel like it's hard to see that kind of dynamic on TV. And it really, I've had my like problems with family members not really like approving of the things that I do, and sometimes you live out like your dreams through your roles and like the conversations you wish you could have. So it was like very moving for me. And Nandini was I don't know what she felt, but it was very like, she was like, she felt like offset, like she kept saying like, it's like you're my daughter. I think that's what she kept saying. I could be wrong. And I imagined that's what she was saying. Maybe I'm making that up. I don't know. Don't take me at my word. But I was like, yeah, and you feel like my mom, but young mom, older sister vibes. So
that's cool. That family feeling that came through in this episode, Matt and I both commented that this episode feels very much like the original Quantum Leap. And Laura, as a fan of the old show and just being a veteran in the industry, were you familiar with Deborah, or at least Deborah's work, before you got to work with her? Like, what was it like to meet the Deborah Pratt?
No, I hadn't. So it was that part was really, really cool. But, I've seen Scott on stage and I've seen him in different things. I mean, I'm just a big fan of Scott Bakula. I think he's a fantastic actor. So, that was, just to just to, go back and think about some of these older episodes were kind of great. And I just love that what Raymond's doing with this character. I love that they're just not trying to duplicate it. They're doing their own thing, which really is hard when you're doing something that's so beloved. Do you know what I mean? So, but they're keeping with the spirit of it. Like you said, like this one is a nod to kind of some of the older episodes. And I love that I got to be a part of this episode because it really is a beautiful one. We don't get to see these episodes until everybody else gets to see them. So it sucks. It's like, I can't wait to see, you read it on the page, you see your other actors, and then, and then on the day you watch like everybody else does, just to watch it play out. So, I know these casting directors, I've known them for years, and they're always fantastic. And as I looked around, the set, which by the way was in the back lot of at Universal, right? We shot at Universal, right, Anisha?
Yeah.
And what was really cool about it, it was one of the days was the epic scene of the fire and whatnot, and it was just the back lot. It was just one of those Hollywood moment days as an actor for me, where you had the Universal tour buses in the background touring this huge street that we're filming on, and everybody's waving, all the actors and the DP and everybody's waving. They're so excited to see behind the scenes on Quantum Leap. It was just one of those wonderful days, just to be in the biz. Wasn't it? Remember that?
Oh my, no, it was incredible. I remember
it was an epic day.
This is what I used to think like Hollywood was, just a bunch of explosion scenes with tour buses kind of going. So it was fun. So fun.
Yeah.
I wanted to actually ask you about that scene a bit because it's one of the most dynamic in the episode, and the finished effects are really, pretty spectacular. You have a huge explosion. So I wanted to know what was it like filming that? Were there a lot of actual pyrotechnics, or is all that done in post? Like how do they pull something like that off?
It was I couldn't even imagine how they would. I thought it would all be in post, but there was a lot that was actually there to react off of. The first thing is me, Raymond, and I think Nandini were all wearing these like chef clogs. So we were trying to run around the car to the scene.
It was pretty funny. I will say that, watching them in those clogs.
And trying to run like a normal person in an emergency with those clogs, and seeing how he executed it was probably the best part of that day for me. But no, they had fire kind of inside the restaurant. Like, I guess they had like a fire bar inside the restaurant that had like actual fire. They had fire, I think, outside of the restaurant. I believe it was real fire, I believe. And then they would shoot like glass shards, which was rubber, and then when we reset, they clean it all up, and then we do it again. And it was like a lot of visual there for us to react off of, so it was super easy because it was almost very close to just being the real explosion. So it was, I mean, like Laura said, it's one of those like moments that you're like, I can't believe I'm in a scene like this. I never thought I'd get to do like a little action scene, So yeah, it was very, and again, with the safety, they were very, very, very professional, and I felt so safe, and I felt like I could run into the fire and be completely fine. So it was like, they were very, they were very safe about that. So it all felt like a really just fun day. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I got to think that being on the back lot, we've noticed a lot of backlot shooting in this season. Because once you see it, you can't really unsee it,
right.
And that's another thing that's right from the DNA of the original Quantum Leap. They were on that Universal backlot quite a bit, and Matt wrote a whole encyclopedia about Quantum Leap. I think he can name every single building and what other show it was in. And was this some of the same?
Sadly, yes.
Some of the same.
It's been lovely seeing. that restaurant has popped up it comes up every other week at the moment in the current series.
Oh,
I love it.
They redressed a lot.
Yeah. So I think that was also the pawn shop in the Bounty Hunter episode too. I'm not sure. And I think it showed up in the background last week. So you guys are part of a long tradition, let me tell you.
Yeah, it was in the first episode as well.
I love that you guys know all these little ins and outs of it. It's so cool.
We're just the nerds. This is just our hobby.
We spend a lot of time watching it.
So, yeah. That being said, any tales from the set that you guys want to share that we haven't touched on, or?
There was. I just remember it was freezing like it is now, and we were wearing Indian clothing is typically for pretty high levels of heat. It's cotton. It lets in a lot of atmosphere, and so the main thing I remember is jumping up and down for before the scenes, try to generate some heat with the cast members and kind of trying to cuddle each other in the between every moment, try to get the heat going. So that was one thing that I remember that was really memorable that brought us together. We were acting like it was a tundra, but it was really just 60 degrees, and it was it was like we were on the set of Alone or somewhere in the Arctic. So that was fun.
Yeah, there was definitely cuddling. We had our little heater. Everybody was huddled around this little heater behind the scenes, and everybody was just in between takes huddled behind it. Everybody, your listeners are like, come on, it's LA. We're not feeling sorry for them, please.
No, I think that's the worst part is we're all used to this sunny, warm womb weather. And so to just get even a little chill was, I felt unbearable. I think everyone was acting we were all drama queens, but it was validated. It was cold. It was validated.
This was filming over December, was it?
Right. Yeah.
Thereabouts. Yeah. Okay, so I think
you're
even by my British standards, that's still pretty cold.
Really? Even by British standards? Okay, then I feel okay. Okay.
Well, so we've been discussing Quantum Leap a lot. Laura, I know that you've done a million things, a little show that no one's ever heard of called This Is Us, and what do you guys got coming up in the future? Where can our listeners look to see you next?
Monday night on Quantum Leap. Let's go, Leapers. Yeah, I am right now. We're for me, I am waiting to see. That you're an actor, you go from job to job, and right now it's pilot season, so to speak. So there's lots of stuff that's in the mix, but we'll see. That's the fun thing about. The fun and frustrating part of this business is that you just have no idea what your next move is going to be until it unfolds, and then you're on Quantum Leap playing just a nasty character, which I would never thought. So right now, for me, it's to be announced.
Okay. Anisha? How about you, Anisha? Anything coming up?
Monday night. Same. It's Monday night. It's the same. I know for Laura it'll be the next thing next week, and hope for me. And you just get it. Hope week by week there's gonna be something. But no, it is very. I'm very thankful for even being Monday night. It's very cool for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I just came off a long run of some fun stuff. The Patient that was on Hulu. I don't know if you guys saw that with Steve Carell. So that's right now. The SAG Awards are tomorrow night, so he's nominated. So right now, that's still in my peripheral of just a wonderful show to have been a part of. But I hope I get to work with Anisha, because I didn't really get to work with her too much on this. So that's my new hope for this year, that I get to work with you, girl.
I know it was so strange. It was like we were literally separated. I would only see you from so far talking to
exactly.
Raymond. And yeah, it was almost method. I was sad it was taken away from you, but yeah.
Can't wait to see it Monday night.
Yeah.
In the family style vein, do either of you have any plans for watching it on Monday nights?
My friends definitely want to watch it. I want to run away and hide, but I will be watching it with them, I think. My family is also probably going to be watching it. Yeah, it's I'm still having trouble watching myself on things. I just hope that it exists like theater and I don't have to see it, but it doesn't. And so so yeah, I don't know. Laura, are you okay with watching yourself on things?
No, I don't like to watch myself on things, but my dad has been stalking me on this episode. Like, he lives in Colorado and he was like, because this got pushed back. This was originally supposed to air on a different time. So he does this thing anytime I'm on TV or anything. I could be on a commercial, doesn't matter. Whatever it is. He sends a mass email out to all these people. And of course, when you're in the biz long enough, things always get changed, right? Either air dates always get changed. And so, it's been a little bit of an ordeal that he's had to go back to his friends and go send duplicate emails.
I guess, sorry, because I know my dad will listen to, he is also a major stalker, crazy stalking. He knows the agents. He's like an engineer, but he knows the agents and the representation of everybody on the cast. It has freaked me out to no end. He's known before I have that it's been pushed back. I don't know how. It's something about dads and stalking. It's cool, but scary.
Right. If we have trouble getting in touch with any of the cast members, we'll give your dad a call. Maybe you can help us out.
Yes.
He already knows their numbers, home addresses.
Dad and my dad should be, watching this together.
Absolutely. No, yeah, absolutely. We have to make that happen.
How lovely is that, though? How lovely is it to be on a show where your parents love to watch? Believe me, I've done a lot of shows where it's like, nah, I ain't watching that show, So it's really nice when you're on a show that, the fam can watch,
Right. Yeah.
And I know that you both had mentioned that you're not very comfortable watching yourselves on screen, but if I can just fan gush a little bit, this is one of the better episodes of the season, and you guys are both terrific in it. Anisha, you have the funniest line in the episode, so you'll know it when you see it, but you should watch it. Trust me.
Oh, I can't wait. Now I can't wait.
I'm so scared. Thank you. That means a lot. Yeah. Sort of. I have no idea what line you're talking about, actually.
When you watch it, you'll know.
I'm trying to figure out what the line is.
All right. Do you want me to reveal it?
Well. I thought the whole thing was fantastic, but
No, it was in the scene actually that you had asked about before, Matt. And Nandini says, "Can I change my mind?" And Anisha looks at her and says, "I don't know. I've never seen you."
Oh my God! I can't wait to see this now.
Yeah, that was a fun moment.
But you were so deadpan, you were just no. It was great. So I don't know. Should we leave that in? I feel like I'm being a little too effusive. So sorry, guys. I'll be okay. I'll be interviewer again. Okay.
No, I love that moment too. It was because so many people in my life are as stubborn as Nandini's character, and it is shocking to have that switch of her being like, I can change my mind. It's like, no, you can't. You never have. I don't know what that's like.
So, yeah, wonderful moment. Just an episode filled with wonderful moments and so evocative of the original. So I want to thank you on behalf of the fandom for bringing the feels back of the original Quantum Leap, because that's something that this show has done occasionally, but as you guys said, it's trying to strike out its own thing. Laura, especially, you've seen the other show, and they're trying to walk that line of being faithful but original.
Right.
And it's nice sometimes for them to just sort of go back to the formula, I guess. Not that this was a formulaic episode or anything, but it hit a lot of the sweet spots that Quantum Leap is known for.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, the cast just had everything to do with that, and I feel like it's because Deborah was behind the camera doing it. I mean, it's her baby, it's her show, so I think she brought a lot of that old sensibility back too. So Yeah, just
Yeah, she
wonderful.
was fantastic. Like one of the best directors I've ever had. I mean, she was just so warm and open, and yeah, it was easy to get to those places with her behind the lead. Yeah.
Yeah, agree.
Well, Laura, Anisha, it's been so wonderful, a treat to talk to both of you. Thank you so much for spending time with us here on the Quantum Leap podcast.
Thanks for having us. Thanks for having me.
It's been really fun. Thank you so much.
And thanks Leapers for watching and being for all these years.
Woo!
There you go, Leapers. There's your round of applause. Thanks, guys.
And we're back.
It was cool.
I enjoyed that. These are great. I love everybody, and I have coming on the episodes, and I'm very thankful for everyone just saying yes and being part of the show.
Yeah,
And I really
think that it
appreciate
is.
that. What
I think it is a testament to how good the show actually is. The fact that, and also how great it must be actually as the environment that they're working in, that so many people are wanting to talk about their experiences. So yeah, it's great. And you know, this group interview sort of, I'll say that again. This group interview format that you're attempting, I think, is working out really well. So maybe we might even see an episode somewhere down the track where we interview most of the main cast all at once. We'll see how we go. Yeah.
I don't hate it. So my laugh out loud moment in this episode is as they're sitting outside Pretty Little Lattes, like a shout out to Pretty Little Liars. Rachel just mentions to Ian about how they were devastated when Pretty Little Liars was canceled. And I just laughed out loud. I'm like, this is great.
So much Deborah Pratt's
you know, people
influence.
that are really into it know, and Deborah Pratt's, it was great.
Yeah.
Just the whole Deborah Pratt directing it and her daughter being in that show. And it was just great. And I laughed and I appreciated it. But more on that, I wanted to talk about this emerging storyline of Ian's past partner, their ex-partner Rachel, played by Alice Kremmelberg, and they thought they had immediate chemistry. I found out after the episode that they were real life partners, so I'm sure that adds to it. But I like that we're seeing, because I like the characters that are at headquarters, and I like seeing more of their lives. Like one thing that I remembered is when they're all watching those Housewives of Somewhere. That was just a great scene that, you know, people getting together and enjoying their time together without crisis going on. So what do you think about that whole part of the episode, the B plot?
To me, one of the things that's been interesting about Ian as a character is that there's a lot that we're going to learn as time goes on. I'm like everybody, I'm still waiting for a Ziggy moment. I want to hear Ziggy. I mean, it's inevitable. And Ian is the one who she would talk to, if anybody. At some point, it would seem that, and that would actually be the moment that I like to think of out of the movie 2010, when the HAL computer said, "Good morning, Dr. Chandra." It was like the hairs on my arms all stood up. And if we had that kind of a moment with Ziggy and Ian, oh yeah, I'd be back of the neck. It'd be, you know, okay, I'm happy. But because Ian is the one who interfaces most with Ziggy. Ziggy is telling them this is what Ben is there to do, or giving them the probabilities. There's so much that they get the opportunity to basically be that contact between Ziggy and the team. And it's, I mean, much as Gushy was before, you know, we saw so much of that. And it's a moment that I look forward to greatly. And I hope we get it before the end of this season, because it's one of the things that could be the whole reason as to why Ian is the one who makes that leap. You know, it could be that Ziggy is saying, you are the person who can make this happen, you know, and it's a big responsibility that any character is going to be hard pressed to deal with. And I think Ian is the one who can make it happen. And I really think that could be, it could be something that would really make the show special in many ways.
I really enjoyed watching Ian's existential crisis. They acted it very, very well. And it's surprising to me that, first of all, they weren't as heavily interrogated as I thought they were going to be. You know, Magic's just like, did you leap? And Ian's like, no, not yet anyway. And, but also the fact that Ian's just absolutely devastated finding out that they're the ones who actually set this in motion and put Ben out essentially trapped in the past. And it is also kind of interesting with it showed just how lonely the life of someone working at Project Quantum Leap would be. And I have to empathize here now with both Ian and Addison. And Ian, this would just be compounding on them because of the fact that now Ian's the one that caused Ben and Addison to be separated as well. So there's that extra loneliness there. So Ian's already extremely lonely. Ben's what they consider their best friend, obviously friends with everyone else, but obviously closest with Ben, and seems to be diving even more heavily into Ziggy and the coding and all the different probabilities. It's very good three-dimensional character development. It surprised me that Ian didn't straight away go, oh, hang on, what on earth could have happened in the future which would cause me to want to go leap? You know, Ian immediately jumped to the conclusion that they'd leapt to the dark side and were doing something wrong as opposed to doing something right. And
we've kind of been given a glimpse into why Ian would have made that choice, because we've been told that Ben leaps to save Addison. And the fact that it would be an Ian from the future who is making this decision to be the one who leaps to tell Ben that it's necessary, it makes dramatic sense. And in an overall story arc, you can understand why, because it would have, the death of Addison would have had such an effect on everybody at the project, and to have wanted to make that, it's as much a moment wanting to set things right for Ben and for Addison as it was for Sam to set things right for Beth.
But it's also really interesting that Ian immediately thinks that they've got some nefarious purpose, not trying to put something right, but that they've leapt back to do something bad. So it does make me wonder, is Ian having second thoughts about how everything with Ziggy, especially because Ian's the one who's most involved with Ziggy, how everything with Ziggy is actually progressing? Is Ian seeing a possible pathway to Ziggy being corrupted? We all like to make a guess on what we think is going to happen towards the end of the series, but my theory is that someone hacks into Ziggy, takes control, and then Ziggy is essentially completely compromised and doing all the horrible things. Could even be that that's what causes Lothos. Who knows? But yeah, and Ian, it seems like, especially with Janice hacking in as well, it seems that Ian might be losing faith with how, maybe not how reliable Ziggy is, but how easy it is for someone to be able to use it for nefarious purposes. And we've seen that sort of theme pop up in a couple of other episodes as well, like the one in the nuclear reactor. The guy who was going to blow it up saying eventually technology always falls in the wrong hands. I'm wondering if that's foreshadowing what might end up happening with Ziggy. And maybe that's when we start hearing Deborah's voice. I would love to hear Evil Ziggy. Evil Ziggy would be awesome.
I would love to hear Ziggy, Deborah Pratt as Ziggy. From what I know from my friends of mine, outlook not so good. But hopefully everyone that's informed me of that is wrong or intentionally misdirected, because it would be a really nice moment, I think. So, but of course, this is season 1, and we got a season 2, and hopefully there's many more.
that's one of the nice things about having that season 2. There's a lot of things we want to see settled at the end of season 1, but you can't have an all overarching conclusion. You have to have something that is going to tie the two together, and obviously a moment that, whatever it is, yes, we're hoping that we'll get some answers, but I think that answers come with questions, and there will be more questions than answers. I hope, because if you look at the way some other shows have done story arcs, X-Files, for example, where you get an answer and an answer opens many other questions that maybe you don't want to ask. Maybe you don't want to know the answers to all of it. And again, good storytelling. It's one of the things that I hope we continue
Well,
to
you
see
never
more.
know.
Did you know those were real
You never
bees?
know. We
Isn't
could
that
even
crazy?
find season 2 is all about the Ian leaping chronicles, because we know Ian's out there leaping now too. It could be the end of season 1 is seeing Ian decide to make the leap after this cataclysm happens, and then season 2 might be where we start seeing Ian trying to put right what's going to go wrong.
Well, we also have kind of a point here. One of the things that I've been curious about is we know that Janice has assembled a lot of equipment from Project Quantum Leap for what goal she had in mind. We know that Leaper X, if you want to call Martinez that, at some point either comes from the same Project Quantum Leap or comes from a different Project Quantum Leap at the military. It could be that, again, these different people leaping could just be at different points. I mean, if you look at a timeline where Addison dies while leaping, and the effect that it would have had, would then have been, would they have abandoned him or sent somebody else in the guise of Leaper X off to try and find him, and then maybe Ian goes off to try and again to give Ben the reason why Ben should be going instead of Addison. Again, a lot of things to see as it all unfolds.
A couple things stood out to me with this timey-wimey Ian arc. One of the things was they mentioned, and they call it out, that the drawings of Ian are an older Ian. So an Ian from the future. Now, to look that much older that you notice it in a drawing, I would think 10 years, 15 years in the future. So unless we get a flash forward episode to where they're going to do it, we might not get that storyline until season 7. But I think the end of this season we'll get a Judgment Day type of episode, and that might take place in the future. Now, I don't know if it will or not at all, but if we're dealing with a future Ian and they've introduced this story arc and stuff has to happen, that would be probably the time to do it. And that also gives them a reset point for season 1, because the original creators of this reimagined Quantum Leap, this new Quantum Leap, are different than the ones running the show now. So if the new showrunners want to do something a little different or even completely different, that would be a good point to hit the reset button and just change everything. And the other thing I thought of is Ian in these drawings has bangs. So if Ian just decides never to get bangs, which is a good decision,
unless
you
you've got
never
acne.
get bangs, anyone. If Ian never gets bangs, well, still, I mean, but anyway, you should never get bangs. So if they decide just not to get bangs, or it gives Ian the power sitting there. If they decide to themselves, you know what, I will never leap back to no matter what, then all of time and space changes around them. And a lot of people have that option, somebody could just leave town. Addison could just move to another country. Timelines changed, right? So there's a lot of things that could happen. So I'm interested to see what will happen.
Addison would leave Ben, much like I don't think that Al would have ever left Sam, or Donna, for that matter, would ever leave Sam. I mean, it's one thing to to create a character and give them a motivation. I mean, I agree. I think at some point it's entirely possible a flash forward, if you will, to give us the older Ian leaping back to set Ben off on his tasks is entirely possible. But we may only see the Ian that has arrived. We may not understand the Ian that left the future to come to the past, and that may be a budgetary limitation all on its own, but it's a dramatic limitation. It's a good one, because you don't expose those questions that might be asked. He's here with a purpose. You're going to pay attention. It's much like the whole end of Mirror ending, where the bartender sits outside with Sam and says, this is what it is, and this is what's going to happen. And, it could be the same kind of thing, that kind of moment between an older Ian and Ben, so it's definitely a possibility.
Well, the reason I was thinking that is, like, say Addison did move away and decide never to, whatever caused to happen, that Ian would have to leap back to make Ben leap. It would be like in the Voyager episode Time and Again, where Janeway stops them from rescuing her, so then the whole thing doesn't happen to begin with. So that by leaving Ben, she would actually be reunited with Ben, was my thinking.
I think you need to take a page from the eminable Dr. Gushman and go with the quote, "Time and space can be a bitch."
It can. So after the Deborah interview, we'll take a break, and we'll be right back with Roger's Leap and Look. And Roger, you got something cool, right?
Yes, I do.
All right, we'll be right back.
Hello, Leapers. It's Matt and Chris here, and we're very happy today to have a special guest. It's friend to the podcast, our very dear friend, Deborah Pratt. Welcome back to the show, Deborah.
Thank you very much. Great to be back.
And particularly special as well, because after so many years' involvement with Quantum Leap, this is the first time you're directing an episode. Amazing.
Yes, it's true. It's true. I was head writer and executive producing, and every time there was a fire, I had to, it seemed like it was my turn to direct something, but I always made sure there was a Black woman directing. Of those 4 episodes, we're the only women that directed, as a matter of fact. I remember once they came to me and said, the script is completely not working. The studio and the network are rejecting it. We need a script by Monday. It was Friday. I had 3 days to write a script. I wrote Sea Bride.
Oh, you wrote that in 3 days. Wow. That's a personal favorite. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Mine too. And funny, with Family Style, I wanted to have a big Bollywood dance number. So when I wrote Sea Bride, I went to Scott and I said, "Can you tango?" And he went, "I can learn." I said, "I know, you can learn anything." And so I called a dear friend of mine, Bobby Duncan, who is no longer with us, and said, "I'm going to write a scene that has to be played out against a tango number." And he said, "Got it." And I thought, he nailed it, Scott nailed it, Beverly nailed it. I mean, everybody just had a great time. And then the interesting thing was, after we did it, I saw it in like 4 or 5 television episodes. I saw it in 2 movies. Suddenly it became the thing to do. So it made me very proud that Quantum did it first.
So when you say that you were slated to direct episodes of the series during the original run, do you recall which episodes those were? Were they specifically ones that you had written, or you had just come up in the rotation for that season, or how did that work back then?
Well, they definitely had a rotation, and at the beginning of the season, they put you into slots. And I don't know that I could recall. I wanted to say it was one of the courtroom dramas. I don't think it was the third part of maybe it was part 3 of the trilogy, or So Help Me God. It was one of those two I remember. Anyway, it was just, it didn't happen. And I didn't think we were going to be taken off the air. Wait a minute, I haven't directed.
So season 6 finally comes along 25 years later, and your executive producer, was this part of the goal for you as this all kicked off, that you would finally get your chance in the director's chair this year?
I said, if I'm coming back to do this show, I'm directing more than one episode. So I'm directing one in August in season 2. So hopefully it'll just keep going in that direction, because it's such a fun show. The cast is so great. The scripts are wonderful. I love everybody, producing, cast, crew, writers. I feel very blessed that the show has been embraced and created in a way that it can grow and prove my point that Quantum Leap can be a legacy show that goes on for 10, 20 years, and movies and games and toys and franchise stuff. And I couldn't get people to see or hear that. And I'm hoping that this time I've made a leap home.
So one of the things we've been speaking about this weekend is how Family Style is such a small, self-contained family story that it harkens back a lot to the original series. Did that make that an appealing episode for you to direct, or was it just that it just happened to be the one assigned?
It happened to be, when I saw the story come in, I was very interested in it and said so. When I saw the script come in, I knew that it was, and that I could take all the magic from the original show and sprinkle it in the script, because Adritha's script it was about humanity and people and food and all the things that make us human. It was a very humanizing story, and it set up things like prejudice and the struggles of an immigrant family. It set up the loss of a family member. It set up children growing up. I mean, it hit on so many central family core elements that as soon as I read it, I said, I got this. And I tried to talk them into doing a Bollywood number at the end. That's my big dream. I want to direct a Bollywood movie with a big dance number. But Adritha, her sensibility of the culture was so enlightening to me. And, I got to do all the foodie stuff that I had seen in The Bear. And, once I got the script and saw the heart in it, I immediately saw the humor in it. And I told them, I said, this is going to feel like a comedy, but it'll be a roller coaster ride. So it'll go from comedy to drama and then back to comedy. And to me, that was truly the gift of Quantum Leap, that you could go through so many emotions in telling this story. And I was excited because Raymond had said to me, and I had seen it in just him having fun around the set, he had said that he had gone to clowning school, which is why he's so physical, and his performances, I think, contributes to that. So he was right in it and right on it, and had some beautiful, wonderful, just humorous moments that I could capture to help tell the story. And I think it got to expand his character, and he got to have some fun. Yes, it was dramatic, when Kathy and her goon pulled a gun on him. But also when Kathy said to him, when he came up after the restaurant was destroyed, and said, "You did this." And I loved her reading. I wouldn't, I would never. but she said something that's so Karen about the moment as I saw it, when she said, and if you reported it, they wouldn't believe you, they would believe me, wouldn't they? And it was such a quantum leap moment in that sense, where someone would have the opportunity to see in themselves, wow, that's that mentality of, you think you're better than me just because I'm an immigrant or my skin is brown. And it opens a dialogue for a conversation, which we desperately need in this country. It's not you acting out, it's you watching someone else act out, and it's how you relate to it. Which side of that coin do you stand on, and how watching it makes you feel? I think that's Quantum Leap in general. You watch a show that you love, what makes you love it? I think the humanity, again, I go back to that in Sonali's journey. And Nandini did such a beautiful job in it when she had to come to the conclusion that her children were grown. She didn't have to be the mother because they were grown. And that whole last moment between she and Ben is so poignant for him, because he got to do what he couldn't do in his own life, childhood, was just to say, I love you to his mother. And for her, which was to accept the fact that it was okay to let your children, to love them with open arms. Your arms are open, they can always come back, but you're open now. I trust you as an adult. And I think those messages were important for me as a director to make sure they shone brightly, because they're so relatable, they're so universal.
It's funny you mentioned the fact that it was kind of like a roller coaster. It's going to seem like a comedy, and then we're going to go to the drama. When we spoke to Nandini yesterday, she had mentioned the fact that sometimes she felt like she was on like a dramatic set, and then all of a sudden it was like being on like a 4-camera comedy. And she said that you had helped guide her through that because it got very intense at points. And we also discussed the fact that for such on paper, such a harsh character, like someone that is just stubborn and prideful and will not see anybody else's point of view, she never came across as unlikable. And she and you had a discussion about that to try to thread that needle. Can you talk a little bit about that process? Because a lot was riding on her performance in this episode.
Yeah, I know that was the big fear of everybody at that network in the studio. And I said, if we cast it correctly, you won't have anything to worry about. And so what I mean, there were several times that she and I sat down and talked. But I said, in this opening scene, I need to see your strength, but at the same time, I need you to be a mommy. For you, this woman standing behind you is still 12 years old. And when Ben says, yes, chef, and she goes, yes, chef, and she punks his nose, and that was her idea. And it was just the perfect gesture to say, how about yes, mummy, right? Those things made her endearing. And she's a wonderful actress. She took direction incredibly well. There was a depth to her that I truly appreciated. And she was struggling with something she didn't even know she was struggling about. And the big emotion that plays into it is fear. You've lost your husband. You're about to lose your children. How do you keep the one business that he left you going, and it's already falling off of a cliff? So she's questioning her very existence, and at the same time trying to be as strong as her husband was. And, you know, the other thing I thought Adritha did so beautifully was she brought in the essence of the culture and her understanding of, I knew music was incredibly important. Her understanding of the music, she was very helpful in selecting all of that. The wardrobe, I was shooting the scene in the restaurant when Meera and I can't think of it. Well, Gory is the other cousin, came in with the gifts and the flowers for the year of his death. And I think Gory came in, and her scarf looked strange to me. And I reached over to try to adjust it. And she said, every fold in this scarf has meaning. And I went, wow. And I stepped back and I said, I don't know this culture. Please put it back the way it was. So it was. And Adritha, I think in writing that, it was very specific about what foods she chose to put in the episode, how these women dressed, how each of the family members dressed, so that there was, and I thought it was very important. I remember talking to our costume director, Genevieve. I said, I want this show to be about jewel tones. I want everybody to be in golds and rubies and sapphires and the colors that bring in the depth of what I think to be the culture. And I think that was a really good choice. She did a beautiful job in the richness of it that I don't think the series has the opportunity to reflect. So not only you were telling a story about a family, but you were telling a story about a culture and the food that pulls them together. And which is why I'm asking everybody that watches the show to tweet your favorite food, tweet your favorite, family dinner story. And if you're an immigrant, tweet what's important about your family coming together around the table for food. There's a scene at the end where I set everybody coming around a table, because that was very important at the end, where they talk about they owe $30,000 in debt. And then Meera says, or Podamini, I forgive me if I mess these names up, says, I got a big bonus. I'm happy to chip in. And then somebody else says, I'm happy to chip in. I wanted that whole thing to happen around a table. Even though they're not sitting down and eating, they come together around this table. So there was a lot of symbolism that it was important for me to weave in the storytelling.
One of the things that I think, Matt, you might have mentioned it already in your opening statements, was the fact that this one felt so much like the original Quantum, in the sense that we got a lot of family backstory for Ben too, which expanded on some of the stuff that we saw in What a Disaster, It's a Disaster, a Disaster. I don't know what we're calling it these days, but I wanted to know if that specifically you were trying to evoke some of the feeling of the old show, or was it just happened to be in the script? Were there elements that you said, yes, this is so quintessentially Quantum Leap, let's play this aspect up? And I asked that because when I watched this episode, both times I felt more connected to Ben as the leaper, as the lead, than I have in many of the previous episodes. And I think it's due to that old Quantum Leap feeling. And it also, it brought me to tears both times I watched it. Oh, so it really did have a lot of the DNA of the old show, while bringing some of the strongest elements of the new show to the fore. I wanted to know what kind of balancing act you did there, or was it even conscious?
No, it was very conscious. When I read the beats for the story, I thought, this has the potential of being in my mind, a true OG Quantum Leap. When I got the script, I read it and I went, and then I knew I was directing it. I said, I know all the magic places. I know all the magic places, because this is my other child, of how to make this a genuine old school Quantum Leap. And so I really went through when I was setting my shots, and I said, I want it to be fun. I think I told you before, I have 4 H's that I feel make a Quantum Leap, which is history, heart, humor. I always forget the 4th one. History, heart, humor, and
hope.
Hope, the most important one. And this one had it all. History, heart, humor, and hope. I'll get it right someday. I need more coffee. What are you talking about? And it had it all. And I thought, this is my opportunity to marry these shows. And Adritha was a dream. She taught me so much about the Indian culture and the love of the food. You cannot watch the show without wanting to go order Indian food. It was fun in the sense that, I said to Raymond, you love this. You have to play that you love the idea that you've leapt into a chef and that it made you fall in love with this family. So through the food, through your dream of being a chef, and Addison was incredibly supportive in that line where she said, better than sports, you like food. So again, it was very well written, very well, elements were very woven in. And then I was able to bend the performances so that you fell in love with these people. And even when they had the argument and Manisha walked out on the family, you saw the stakes being raised of this family's fallen apart. They've lost the father, the sister's being, ignored and disrespected by the mother. The mother is trying to be respected by her daughter, which were such universal family issues. How do you become a woman under the umbrella of a strong woman? Is a huge question that most girls have to ask themselves. And the first time that you stand up to your mom and says, no, Mom, I'm grown, is a shock to both of you. So the reality of the story and the humanity of the story and the universality of the story were on the page, and I saw them through my lens, which is, I think, why I was able to get the performances, because I knew what to ask for, and the actors were so wonderful about getting it. They got it, and Bill to, what was setting up of what was set up in the very beginning of Sam's loss. I'll never stop doing that. Of Ben's loss of his mother and the fact that he never got to say goodbye, and to give him that was a huge opportunity. And I knew how important it was for the show, for the character, to endear the audience, to make them understand, and to the people that no one is, or so rarely are you there when someone you love that much as your mother leaves the world. And that last, I love you, to get to say that is important. And that's some of the magic of Quantum Leap. I think I told you a story about a young man who related to me watching the show with his parents, and they were getting a divorce, and his world was falling apart. And he said, I wish Sam would leap into my life and fix my life. And I thought that's why the show is incredibly successful, because it gives you the hope of somebody coming in to fix it. And then the reality that it's up to you to at least fix it for yourself, if not actually fix the situation that it is based on. So.
Yeah. The end of this one reminded me so much of the end of Promised Land, when Sam gets that final hug with his dad, which he never even got in the leap home. He just said, goodbye, Dad, made the shot, and he leapt. So giving Sam that closure, I honestly, I felt like I was watching Scott. I'm going to stop gushing now. It's not to denigrate Raymond, but I felt like Scott was back on the set. That's how much I love this episode. And we're talking about sort of the blending of the old series and the new series, and knowing the sweet spots and finding that DNA. It's funny to me, we haven't been able to speak to you since the series premiered. The last time we spoke to you, you had permission to speak to us, but you really couldn't say anything about the new show or the process. So I want to go back and have that interview too, if we can. Just spend a couple of minutes talking about, this whirlwind. I mean, it's from last September to now. It's crazy to me that we're almost done with the first season of the new Quantum Leap, and we're just now getting to talk to you about the whole process. Can we go back to the beginning and just talk about what you've been doing, what you've been feeling, what's it like to bring this baby back to the world?
Well, I'm grateful to be a voice and to add my. It's a tough situation because I want it to evolve in the direction that it's going to evolve. So I don't want to say go this way, go this way, go this way. So a lot of which I have done, but a lot of what I call myself keeper of the lore. So I can talk to them about, how Ziggy is used, how when Addison should just hit a button and pop out rather than walk away, how, and they've bent the realities that we originally created of having her be in a scene and sitting on something. But we just play the fact that there are chairs in the imaging chamber. And the suspension of disbelief has worked in that sense. The fact that Ryan and Stephen, when they conceived of the present, conceived it wrapped in a love story, I thought was very special and unique. And also the fact that, unlike the original Quantum Leap, because we couldn't afford a fancy headquarters, the audience, was trapped in the past with Sam, and the only connection to the future was Al. So Al's sentimentality about history was through his lens. He had experienced civil rights because he marched in the civil rights. He marched for civil rights. Probably walked in Black Lives Matter, so he has seen those things and brings a personal history to them. I like the fact that they're playing that the personal history of all the members of the Quantum Leap team come in sentimentality. Last 2 week ago episode, Let Them Play, was beautifully done, I thought, when Ian told their story that reflected into the character. And so it's finding a balance of allowing for the creation that I think Martin and Dean and the writers have so carefully crafted, taking us into the next evolution, the next generation of this series. So you can say, okay, it is Quantum Leap, but it's a different direction. So if I could describe it the best way is in parallel worlds, there's room for multiple versions of it, just like Star Trek. You may have loved the original Star Trek, but Next Generation was just not your flavor. And Enterprise might have been closer to what you thought it should be, because at its core, it was a series of anthological moralistic stories, very biblical in that sense. And I think that what made each show successful was there was enough of that in every one of them, and there's enough, cool science fiction to take care of the nerds like me that I can switch into. So I think what they've done by introducing this fabulous headquarters and the technology that Ziggy has become is really cool and really fun. And the only thing that does in keeping us in the present is created two shows that now have to blend together. So I was very lucky in this one because I had a little more latitude in those 42 minutes that you get in television to really get into the heart of the family show. And then the story of that's going to take us through, and hang on to your seats, to the season finale will be was so amazing because, again, it was a very personal story for Ian and magic. Oh my God, Ernie Hudson. I love him so much. I told you when we were talking casting and I knew that that magic was coming back. I just went, Ernie Hudson, Ernie Hudson, Ernie Hudson, Ernie Hudson, Ernie Hudson. That's it. That's the only person that can play it. And I believe that he nailed it. He nails it every week. He is the father of Quantum Leap that, I guess in Dean's own way represented too. But, and then we got to see a side of Ian in the relationship with Rachel. They tell their story and question themselves as to their capability of making the decision that was made, not knowing why. And I think it really triggers the rest of this journey for this season, which hang on to your seats. It's going to be a bumpy flight. That's all I can.
Just sticking with the Ian plot for a moment. We noticed Mason Mason had their real life partner to work with. Was
Alex,
was that their suggestion? Did that just come about naturally through casting? And what kind of impact did that have on how the scenes played out?
Well, there was an instant chemistry for sure. And we had met Alice up in Vancouver and liked her, and I'd seen her a bunch of other times. So when the idea came up that she was available to do it, it was a no-brainer for sure. For sure. So, yeah, that wasn't a big thing. It's instant chemistry between them because they love each other and they care about each other. So they could play that moment really brilliantly. And it also gave potential for future storylines. I hope. I haven't seen it yet, but I hope.
Well, when you mentioned future storylines and the potential that was sort of embedded in the dynamic that you set up in this episode, especially with Ian seeing their ex-partner, we finally got out of the project a little bit and saw these characters more as individuals instead of workers. And I am wondering if the show is going to maybe lean a little bit more into that as the breakneck pace of the mystery box starts to wrap itself up. Do you think that we'll have a chance? Because one thing that is very marked about this episode is that it just had a chance to breathe. There were just some nice, intimate scenes that weren't all about chasing the next clue. And I think the show benefited from it. Will we be seeing more of this type of storytelling where applicable as the show goes on? If you can even answer that.
I'll let you know as to how well we do on Monday night. Because that's what determines a lot of that. It really is. Television is interactive in its own special way. You have a vision, you have an idea, you have the voice of the characters. I think, again, Martin Dean, the writers, all really understand the direction they want to go, but it can bend based on the love that the audience gives the show. So, it's really up to the response of the audience, I believe. But I trust all these people. I joke saying that Quantum Leap was my middle child. But I see so much potential from what is happening with the show. And I think you nailed it, Christopher, in the sense that there was a breath, and there should be that kind of breath. And maybe not every episode, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see how people respond to it. And if the love of it is there, why not? Mm-hmm. But you have to remember that the surrounding ingredient is the audience. We're not just saying, here, watch this. We're saying, how does it make you feel? This is a show about how does it make you feel? And as long as we respect that, which we did deeply in the original series, Quantum Leap can live on. That's what I'm talking about.
So, now that you've directed your first episode, you have another one coming up in the second season. When are we going to get a Deborah Pratt script? Are you writing any episodes? Are you part of the writer's room, or is that a possibility going forward?
Well, I'm not part of the writer's room other than I give my notes. So in that sense, yes, I am. Again, it's very important to me that this lives and breathes on its own. I'm writing a motion picture for Quantum Leap. We'll see if it goes. But I believe that the franchise is expandable in that way. If frickin' Star Trek can have 9 spin-offs and 9 movies, that so can we. I keep saying this. Never say never. Anything is possible.
Okay. I'm really pulling for the Teresa Bruckner return and Troyan's return to the show. So where's Teresa at these days? She'd fit right into the wheelhouse.
A funny story. So after Troyan did Teresa, her father wrote her a reoccurring character in a series called Tequila and Bonetti, about a guy and a talking dog. And she gets on the set as Mariska Hargitay's daughter. And they start calling her by a different name. And she stopped the director and she says, no, my name is only Teresa. All of 6. And we get a call from the set saying, I'm getting notes from a 6-year-old saying she will not allow herself to be called anything but Teresa. And when I stopped laughing, I said, you're going to have to take her note. I'm sorry. It was very funny.
Did she become Teresa in that? It's been a while since I have seen Tequila and Bonetti, but
she did.
Oh, brilliant. I never noticed that connection.
And then Don wrote her a big episode where she was kidnapped and this, that, and whatever happened. And he brings the episode to her and she looks at it and she says, well, where are the words that I have to say? And so he shows her and there's like pages and pages of dialogue. And she goes, nah, I don't want to do that. That's too many lines. And he said, comes in my office and he goes, talk to your daughter. And I went, what do you mean talk to my daughter? She won't do this. And this flashes back to, I think, the story I told you when we shot Another Mother. She was on the set waiting to do a scene with Dean Stockwell. And Dean Stockwell walked onto the set. And I had the kids, Troyan actually was the only one that was born at the time, down to the set. So he knew her, but suddenly he sees her sitting on his set. And he looks at her and I'm over there, just thinking how cool this is that, my daughter is doing an episode of my show that I wrote. And he comes over to me and he goes, why is she here? And I went, what? Oh, she's going to play the little girl. And he goes, do you need the money? And I went, what? He said, do you need the money? Because if you don't need the money, do not take away that child's, her childhood. And I looked and I saw a child star who had supported his family for his entire life, giving me a piece of advice that was gold. And so after that show aired, I got all kinds of calls from people saying they wanted her in this and that and the other. And I went, no, I don't need the money. And she needs a life. And she was friends with the Olsen twins at that time. And I had experienced going out with them and what it was like to be surrounded by people. And I thought, if she loves this business, she'll find her way back to it. And she did in Pretty Little Liars, for sure. So when Don said, talk to your daughter, I went, well, you talk to her. But based on what Dean said, I'm not going to push this. So he had to rewrite the episode. And I'm trying to think of the actress. She went on. She's still a very successful working actress that he wrote the episode about. He just changed that it was not about her daughter, but about this other young girl. What was her name? She had an unusual name, like Thorin or...
Thora Birch?
Thora Birch. It was Thora Birch. Yeah.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure that's what it was. Anyway, so those are the things that I think make this an interesting family drama.
So, Deborah, it's been a fantastic half hour or so talking to you, as always. Could you maybe just finish by giving us a couple of your key hopes for the future of Quantum Leap and the franchise?
A motion picture or a series of motion pictures, a ride at Universal Studios, a video game. I mean, I feel like there's an animation series that could spin out of it. I think that there is, by the way, I don't know if you know this, but Raymond Lee can sing. I hope we do some episodes where he performs because he has a gorgeous voice and soulful as Get Out, all Get Out.
Soundtrack CD.
Soundtrack CD, exactly. And Ian, they also have an amazing voice. So between the two of them, I think, it could be a really fun scenario to tell a story. Scott certainly was, anything you asked of him, he just kind of said, oh yeah, I can do that. Except for the episode where he was a catcher in the circus.
Yeah.
Felt so bad for him. He had to swing upside down for hours. And I just felt so bad for him. But Quantum Leap can be anything and can do anything. And the more talented the actors are, the more exciting the possibilities of storylines are. In family style, we got to talk about being an immigrant. Again, that moment where Kathy has blown up the place and she's talking to the firemen and says, well, you give immigrants from another country a shot and look what they do and whatnot. And then when Ben comes up to her and says, you blew up this restaurant, you burned this restaurant. And she said, I never would. And she said, and if you tried to tell anybody, who would they believe? It was such a powerful Karen statement of, I'm better than you. I'm white. You're brown. Get used to it. And to me, on a whole other level, it opens a thought process and possibly a conversation with people who never talk. We live in a country where people forget how to talk to each other. They just go, you don't like it. I like it. We don't have anything in common. But the truth is, there's so much that you have in common. And if it did what the original series did, which was to open a dialogue, then the power of television, the power of good writing, becomes even more important. And that's what I saw when we first created Quantum Leap. And the opportunity to do it again is here. The right people to do it again is right here. And the audience, obviously, are coming to the table. So tweet me your favorite food. Tweet me your favorite family story. If you're an immigrant, tweet me something or come to thevisionquest.com and send me a letter under contact. I try very hard to answer them. And then also, let me know how you feel about the show. How did this show make you feel? I'm telling everybody I have a new book coming out called Mirrors. The Dragon Mirror is the first in the series. And if you go to mirrorsthenovel.com, it's just going up. So it's a really fresh series. But come and check it out. I'm creating new stuff all the time. So I'm writing. I'm growing. Let me put it that way.
Well, that's fantastic. We will look forward to checking that out. Deborah, thank you again for your time. And on behalf of the Leapers everywhere, thank you so much for being such an integral part of the show and its relaunch and for sticking close to it to continue to be its guiding light.
We got season 2. Thank you. And thank you, Matt, for the incredible work that you have done on your books. I can't wait to see the new one. I'm very excited about it. Like I said, it has saved me in many an interview.
You flatter me so much.
So I'm really excited to see to get the new one, and thank you for the time and the effort and the energy in capturing the behind the scenes and the quirkiness of the show and the beauty of the show and the love of the show. And someday I'm going to get them to do a kiss with history. That's what I got to do before. Just one kiss with history. And they're tough. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Deborah.
And we're back. Deborah Pratt.
She's
Love
so
her,
good.
love her, love her. Wow. Deborah Pratt, the director of this episode, co-creator of Quantum Leap, voice of Ziggy, writer of so many of my favorite Quantum Leap episodes. And she's just the most nice, kindest, intelligent,
The voice
every
of Tina.
good descriptive word you can think of. I'm sure she could think of more because she's a writer.
She
I'm
played
not.
Troyan.
But she is just, yeah, exactly. Portrait for Troyan. She's just great. I love her. She's on the short list of a person I would drive across the country to change a tire for. She's a great person, and I just so excited
And
to have her on the show.
How lucky is Matt? Matt got to have lunch with her.
Yeah, they were hanging out like buds. I was like, I almost flew to California, but certain things didn't work out. It was going to be three of us, but it turned out it was just Matt and Deborah. But he had the time of his life, and he couldn't stop beaming from ear to ear. So, and you can see why. Deborah Pratt. Wow. Okay, so Deborah Pratt. Wow. Now, we did promise a leap and look from Roger. Roger, I don't know what you have. I think Hayden got a preview, but I have no idea. What Quantum Leap ephemera do you have?
Well, I need to ask a question first. Do you know who the writer was of the episode? Let me take a look here. The episode of The Leap Home. Who was the writer? The credited writer?
The Leap Home.
Don Belisario.
Don Belisario.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
Don Belisario.
All right. Well, the reason I'm asking is because one of the things, as I mentioned, way back when, back in the America Online days, the last season of the show, we started to get little gifts from somebody who was involved at some point in the production, between either the network or Belisari's productions. We started to get little gifts. And some of the gifts actually came to be scripts. And interestingly enough, the goodie that I have is a copy of the script for The Leap Home.
Wow.
And it's an early version of the script.
Oh, how
Because
cool.
there are things in here and people that are referenced that don't show up in the episode. Or in the following episode.
Like who?
So it's very interesting. There are things like the whole basketball scene at the end. There's a whole sequence about Sam not going to make the shot, and a back and forth conversation that he's having with Al on the court about, come on, Sam, you've got to make the shot. No, I'm not going to make the shot. And the way that it was edited together with the great music, it's not what was in the script here originally. Also, the whole leap in to the Vietnam episode. Here in the script, it's written as if it's a moment out of Apocalypse Now, taking place on a PBR.
Wow.
It did not happen on a PBR. It happened.
Is that like a PB&J?
What's a PBR?
PBR was what the Navy called Patrol Boat River. So it was the, if you see an Apocalypse Now, the scene where they're going upriver in the boat, that was what they had intended to basically leap into. That Sam was going to leap into Magic, Magic was actually at the throttle and at the helm of this PBR, and Tom was the captain of the SEAL squad on board the PBR. And that's obviously not what was written, but it's not what we saw originally. So it's a fascinating look at it, just to go back.
Yeah. Well, it makes a little bit more sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
It makes a little more sense, doesn't it? Because Tom and Magic were in the Navy, weren't they? Not the Army. So why were they doing
That's
army
right.
stuff in the episode? It makes more sense that they'd be on a boat, wouldn't it?
A squad of Navy SEALs, and Navy SEAls basically do missions that involve ground pounding, I guess would be the best way to put it. So,
wow. And who is the credited writer of this episode?
that page is missing. The front page, all of the other scripts I have shows the writer, the production, who the director is. But in this particular copy that I received, that page is missing. That's why I asked the question. So it's
Roger, off air, you might have to give me your address so I can send you a flatbed scanner.
I actually have a flatbed scanner put away.
Oh, right. Okay, we can talk later. I would love to read that.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to get you in touch with Matt Dale too, because I'm sure Matt is going to want to put all these differences from the original script into Beyond the Mirror Image as well.
Yeah, version 2 is coming out soon.
I have a number of other scripts. The one that I treasure the most, however, is I have a complete copy of the trilogy scripts, and I got that autographed by Deborah. So,
wow.
Kind enough to make a
copy. Is she as beautiful in person?
I have not met her. My came from a convention years ago in Florida that she was appearing at, and I donated a copy for of the 3 scripts for the trilogy for their auction, and she was kind enough to sign my copy and have it returned to me.
Oh, awesome!
Yeah, it's always. It's one of those things that I greatly enjoyed it, but I really would have loved to have seen her write a novelization of the trilogy. I think it would have been great to be able to flesh out that story in a written fashion, and I wouldn't want anybody else but Deborah to do it. And she just declined a couple of times. I made the suggestion, but I think that it was just some of the best writing in the entire series as far as I was concerned, and the fact that it played out the way it did and left such a legacy for the story arc, it just goes to show how integral a part she was of making it a success.
What an amazing leap and look! Do you have anything else Quantum Leapy around at hand?
No, not at hand. Unfortunately, most of my things are in storage right now because I'm actually between locations. So, yeah, it's always been fascinating to me. I've been fortunate enough to have been on a couple of television productions that the whole idea, you talk about the cast and the crew and working so well together as a team and as a family. I found that the shows that I was able to visit, I was lucky enough to see that firsthand, especially a show that, even though it only went a season on Fox, Space Above and Beyond, it had a lot of promise, and some of the people who had worked on the X-Files, it would have been great. But it was again nice to have interaction between the cast, the crew, and the fans. It's one of the things that I've enjoyed from the AOL days, was that the X-Files, there was actually a group that was very much involved, and they actually had, during the weekly chats, there would be people on the set who would be there chatting with fans, asking questions because they wanted to get fan feedback as to what was going on. And it was interesting to see that. And the folks from Space Above and Beyond were the same way. A lot of the same people. So Morgan and Ron.
I remember watching that when it was originally airing. Yeah.
And again, the same thing, cool. You think about, but a studio, says you have this much money to spend, and you got to do it. You got to stay within that. So I really get a feeling of how the current Quantum Leap production has to live within its means, because the cost of producing television shows now is just, even with streaming as an option, it's astronomical. But people deserve to be paid what they're worth, and the cast and crew who does this to bring entertainment to all of us. It's worth every bit of it as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. I was going to ask, when we did the podcast about the mirror image footage, you were talking about the person who was in the mirror image, Gushy's mirror image. That was someone who won a competition. Is that right?
Yeah, there was actually, it was a charitable drawing, I believe. It was at the second Quantum Leap convention held there at the Universal Sheraton. And the idea was that you donated a minimal amount and you went into a drawing to appear as an extra in an episode of Quantum Leap. And I don't know specifically if it was intended to be in mirror image. Because again, I'm trying to remember what episode they had just completed at the time. I don't recall right offhand, but mirror image was still 3 or 4 episodes in production later, and the person who appeared as the mirror image, the person that we saw in the mirror, that when Al the bartender asked, or Sam asked, which reality do I accept, this one or the one in the mirror? And the mirror image was that person. It was a woman who had won the drawing, and I don't remember what her name was.
That's actually what I was going to ask.
Nice.
Matt wanted to know if you remembered so that we could get some more information about it. But no, that's really awesome. I love when they...
I'm sure somewhere, it's unfortunate that Harriet is no longer with us, because I'm sure that she would have been able to answer that question, to tell you who it was, because I'm sure that she was probably the shepherd for that person around the studio and while they were filming.
Yeah, she'd always take my email, Harriet.
The fans owe a great debt to her, not just on Quantum Leap, but on all the Belisario shows. She was pretty much the person who interacted with fans at all levels.
Yeah,
Don
I
was
once
very fortunate to
emailed
have
her
her.
asking if she wanted to be on the podcast, but unfortunately she didn't like being on camera or even on microphone. But she told me that Don at the time, mind you, this would have been 10 or so years ago, but Don at the time had actually written a script for a Quantum Leap feature film, and that she'd read it and that it was very, very good. It's a shame. Well, you never know. We might end up seeing it materialize. Deborah always talks about there being the possibility of a feature film franchise, but it is good to know that there are scripts out there. Yeah.
I'd like to get my hands on that. Yeah.
Well, and it is the thing. A lot of it depends on who owns the rights to that script, and the other one is I've heard rumors that there was a script for an opening of the next season, and I don't know if that's true or not. The original that I have, the original script for Mirror Image, does actually have the ending in it, leaping into the futuristic bar full of space miners. All of the characters' names, in some places, the same characters actually appearing in that bar scene. So, it's entirely possible that there was a completed script for that next episode.
Well, I watched the interview that Deborah did with the Fates Wide Wheel boys, and she was saying that she had mapped out 6 episodes for season 6. She couldn't actually tell anything about them, but at least we know that Deborah, at the very least, had some scripts, if not written, then at least in her head. So I'm sure there must have been stuff written down.
Yeah, there were so many great ideas that never came to fruition. I mean, the Magnum episode, the Baby episode. There was talk of an animated episode. All these things that would have been great. I mean, the one that I heard somebody pitch that I thought would have been hilarious was Sam leaping into a house cat. Just all of these things that could have been, and another season or 2 would have been interesting. What we did end up with, I always look back fondly, and there are some that are a little less memorable than others, but There are some that are so much fun to watch even now, just as a standalone story of. I mean, one of my favorites is A Tale of Two Sweeties. I mean, it just so well played back and forth, and the cast and the way it worked out. It's great entertainment. I think that's one thing we kind of forget from time to time is that a lot of people get very much involved in fandoms and in television shows and or theme parks. I'm a big fan of the Disney company and their theme parks, and there are some people who are just totally invested, and it's all of their life. And I understand it, but I also feel kind of a pity for them, because one of the things that Quantum Leap has said from the very beginning is life is out there and you have to go live it, and it's one thing to be passionate about something and invested in it, but it's another thing to not be willing to experience things as they happen to you. I think from time to time it's easily forgotten.
A good reminder for all of us. Family style. Roger, I want to know two things. One, on a 1 to 5 scale, 1 to 5 objects from the episode, if you can think of one, would you give this? 1 being your least favorite and 5 being really good, maybe your favorite episode. Could you tell us that? And also your least favorite side work you did in a restaurant.
I'll start with the least favorite side work. I worked at a restaurant that was a converted railroad station, and I was the maintenance man for all of 2 weekends. And the maintenance man was the lowest of the low. I came in on Saturday mornings and Sunday mornings and cleaned out the bars after everything had been left over. And then, joy of joys, I got to go walk out around the outside, picking up whatever trash had been accumulated afterwards. And to add injury to insult, my final duty was I got to clean up everything that had been left over by the busboys and the kitchen from the night before. And it's actually what resulted in my leaving that restaurant and going on to explore other opportunities. I was washing glasswares, wine glasses to be precise. And the on-duty manager came up to help me out, broke a wine glass and sliced his hand open. So that was my chuckle in this moment to see in this episode to see the wound that she had in her hand, because I kind of went through that with my restaurant career. Overall, I give the episode a solid 3. I think the family dynamic was good. I think it kind of played into the whole idea of why so many families come to this country and open a restaurant, because they want to do better for their families. They want to provide money so that families can go on to go to college or just to better themselves overall. And I think that carried through the whole idea of the father as the figure for whom they were all still there was the reason. And I thought that played well. So, yeah, a solid 3. And
3? Okay, we'll take it. 3 what? Do you have any objects from the episode that stick out in your mind?
Well, because it's my favorite, I got to go with 3 tikka masalas. How's that?
Ah, there you go. There you go. Hayden, final thoughts in your 1 to 5 rating and your least favorite side work. You can start
when I
with
worked
the
at the
least
pizza
favorite
shop, my least favorite thing was dealing with the customers. I tell you, the amount of abuse that I dished out, it really took its toll. But as for the rating, it was good. It was watchable. I had a lot of praise for it, but there were a few things that either didn't make sense or just gave me the cringe. So I don't know whether to give it a 3 or a 4. I might go 3.5 pretty little lattes out of 5.
All right. That's pretty good. I'll start off with my least favorite side work. I was thinking about it. There's so many because I did so many different jobs in a restaurant. So many different jobs. Probably my least favorite, the one I dreaded the most, besides doing invoicing and ordering and putting the truck away, that kind of stuff, That was just physically taxing. I think changing out the deep fryer. I never enjoyed changing out the deep fryer. That thing would get black and smoke before I change it. So on a 1 to 5 scale, I'm going to give it 5 because I have given other episodes 7. But I'm going to give this one a 5. It was great.
Albie hasn't given anything less than a 5 the whole series,
I don't think every episode... 5 rusty paint chipping off poles that are holding the ceiling up in the kitchen that has been in many episodes. So 5. I'll give it a 5. Yeah. Not every episode has to have life or death stakes, end of the universe consequences. Some can just be nice little family stories. So, I really enjoyed it. Deborah, I think, did amazing her first time out directing a Quantum Leap. I messaged her right away and said I loved it. It was great. Great job. So I really think it was good, and it'll be one I watch all the time because normally my favorite Quantum Leaps are ones written by Deborah Pratt, so I got to add this in here now, directed by Deborah Pratt. So, and I think having such a long history in life in restaurants that I did, I mean, a third of my life I spent in a restaurant, so I really enjoyed the restaurant backdrop and the dynamics and just seeing little things that felt true to me, and I really enjoyed that, and it was nice to see that as part of a Quantum Leap episode.
I did like the yes chef moment.
I'd like to thank all our guests that were on this episode, the amazing Deborah Pratt and the actors that were part of this episode, and thank you very much. And I'd like to thank you, Roger, for joining us for this episode of the Quantum Leap Podcast, Quantum Leap Aftershow. And for the Quantum Leap Podcast, Quantum Leap Aftershow, I'm Albie.
I'm Roger Colton.
And I am the high expectations helicopter parent of the Quantum Leap Podcast, Hayden McQueenie.
We'll see you next time.